We're back. Assuming you can all hear us out there, we are good and ready to go. It's been a long time. So long, in fact, that this episode, Geheimnisnacht, was planned for Halloween.
Yep, and I also am currently nesting several birds in my beard at the moment.
Several birds, not just one or two.
Desperate need of a trim.
Maybe you should be a beard master for the day.
Yeah, you know what? I think I actually can manage that. But yeah, oh man, it has been an interesting set of weeks. It has been a very interesting set of weeks.
It's just been weird. I mean, there's been illness, there's been horror, there's been the start of 40k Lorebeards, and that's not just 40,000 new Lorebeards rumbling across the battlefield. That's our new Lorebeards 40k stream run by Ross and Alexis. That went live last night, and it was awesome. Do go check it out if you haven't done so already. And yeah. It's been tough beyond that, but we've got, if you haven't noticed already, a new look. Now, obviously, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see that we've got a new look, but we've got a new look. It's all purdy and looking a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say it's so much sleeker in a lot of ways. It looks good. It looks good.
It's like we're grown up. Yeah. Hi, everyone. We are grown-ups. Look, we've got a grown-up layout that looks grown-up.
It's like, we're trying. We're trying. Ryan, what'd you do to my Sotek? Yeah, it's true. It's true. We're so because Lorebeards is now going through a really nice little cool expansion, we're doing things a little differently. We're treating things a little bit more, you might say, professionally. And
I mean, yes.
Yeah. You have to sell it.
Yeah, professional.
Yeah, and so because of that, we're not on the Loremaster of Sotek channel anymore. So I am not Sotek in this space anymore. I'm just Ryan now. Though inevitably there will still be lots of people that go Sotek, and I'll be like, yeah.
Because it's not just inevitable, it's going to be pretty much par for the course. Also, you might note that it marks this episode as season 5, episode 1, because we're starting off a new season, because we're on a new channel doing new stuff. You might then go, well, where the hell are the other 4 seasons? You're going to find that they're going to get updated over onto YouTube over the course of the next so many weeks. All our old episodes that are spread across LAWhammer and Loremaster of Sotek's channel are going to be ported over here, going to be reorganized, going to get a couple of new thumbnails slapped on those as well, so that you can easily access and find them. So each one will have its own little season 1, episode 7. It also means we'll be able to find them, which is quite useful because we sometimes lose track of which ones we've done and which ones we haven't. And it'll be a really nice way to have it all codified up for us for later.
Yep. Real quick. I will just hit this for Morning to Crescent real quick. Why can't you sub on Twitch yet? So we're waiting to get affiliate status on the Twitch channel, which will be super fast. It'll be like getting affiliate status takes, I think we have to stream like 2 more times this week and then we're good. So once that's there, you'll be able to sub. I think you can do bits already and they just get put aside for when we activate that, but it'll be up soon, probably by next week or at the latest the week after.
Yeah, we're still catching up on the Lorebeards channel side. There's quite a lot of behind-the-scenes admin still getting put in place to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as we'd like. I imagine by, I don't know, this time next year, we're probably done it. I mean, we're professional. Look how slick we are. Yeah, but that being the case, if the bits aren't working over on that side, just pop over onto YouTube and cry for you Twitch lovers. And if you want to drop a super chat our way, you can do so over there.
Yeah, because everything on YouTube should be working
it is.
As intended. So to check out all that, you can get into that, and we'll have memberships coming up on YouTube very soon as well.
Yeah, we will.
All of that will be. All of that is ramping on.
It is. Consider this a large work in progress. Maybe there's a little crane sitting in the corner. Maybe you can see a bunch of snotlings building a pump wagon in the other corner. Basically, we're working towards everything running smoothly, and we like to pretend as we go live today that it is running smoothly.
Yeah, but in any event, yeah, hopefully everyone's doing all right out there. Like I said, it's been a little busy. A lot of crazy things going on. I'm up to the weeds and all the Tides of Torment things that are coming out and on their way forward. And Andy's been busy with quite a few things. Andy was in Germany fairly recently.
Yeah, I was. I was over at DreieckCon, leading some seminars in mapping, doing some talks about the future of role-playing games, and just generally meeting a whole bunch of really cool people. If you happen to be one of those, hello again. It was absolutely great to meet you. And through that, we've also decided we're going to go to GothCon next year up in Sweden, which is the sister con to DreieckCon. So we're going to be popping up to Sweden next year. That's both Lindsay and I. There was no way I could stop Lindsay, even if I wanted to, because she can obviously speak Norwegian, a good chunk of Swedish, and a little bit of the other Scandinavian languages as well. And she just wants to go and basically subject it to everybody that she meets. Poor people are going to be sitting there listening to her waxing lyrical in her obviously perfect Scandinavian languages. I would in no way diss them because I can't speak them at all.
Yeah. But today, we do have a topic on the agenda. Like Andy said, it was a little more themed for Halloween, but nonetheless, we're going to tackle it because it was on the schedule. And it's a good topic that it was one of those ones where I think when me and Andy were discussing what to consider doing for Halloween, we were like, oh no, surely we've talked about that one. Like, we've done that one. And turns out, nope.
No, we haven't. We did Moore's Leap, and there is crossover there. And you're going to find some of the crossover quite evident through the course of this episode. But it's its own thing. I'm quite looking forward to this one. It's also one of those subjects that, as we know and love from our previous episodes of Lorebeards, has a patchy background, which has uncertain canonicity nowadays as to what exactly is Geheimnisnacht, and that's going to be a fun thing as well to discuss, because as we've discussed in previous streams, you can generally pull everything that's in the background together and just make it all make sense with ease.
Yep. Yeah, I expect a good amount of that tonight, because there are some things that elements of the lore will state very confidently about Geheimnisnacht, and you go, is that the case though? Like, is that accurate? And they're like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that being the case, before I dive into my intro, as always, we will do our whatever super chats have come in. We'll go through those, say hello to everybody, because it's really good to be back again. And as always, we'll be taking our super chats in batches. So as we work our way through all of the horror that is Geheimnisnacht and Geheimnistag, we will stop every once in a while, take our super chats, go through those, and occasionally we might even pick up another chat as it comes in too. So please do comment like mad, and we will pick up all the ones that make us smile.
Yep. So without further ado, let's jump into it. It is, for anyone listening, just for reference, we are starting our new season 5, like Andy said earlier, on November the 23rd with Andy and Sotek, and without Sotek, Ryan. And let's jump on into it.
It's going to take getting used to.
Yes, it will. Vault Boy 1300, glad to see you both alive and at least somewhat well. I'm actually doing quite well myself.
I'm really well. I'm like perfect. The issue in the Law household was poor old Lindsay, who had, let's call it, a health event. And that had me in hospital quite a number of times, and she is now being escorted no matter where she goes, lest said health event should remanifest on a whole bunch of new drugs. So, for example, before the stream today, which I was getting ready for by basically doing a quick social media post, like that, I suddenly realized I had nothing to drink beside me. So I quickly went, Lindsay, could you? Crap, I can't send her to the shop across the road because she's not allowed to go unescorted. Fortunately, my daughter and her boyfriend are here. So they basically took her across the road to the shop and took her back again because she can't go anywhere by herself just now. So, yeah, we're both alive. And I reckon we're both pretty healthy. You healthy, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, screw that Nurgle guy.
He is the absolute worst.
Yeah,
absolute fucking worst. Max Hempel Woo! Finally got to catch one of these live. Just finished listening to the Famir episode while painting a cursed Etten.
Good job. Delighted to see that you've joined us live. It's always nice when we do the live broadcast and new folks come in.
Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us here. Hope you enjoyed the Famir episode. That one, I'm pretty proud of that one. We actually got a really, really nice email from the gent who wrote the lore behind Muna Mem. Because someone had sent that to him and he watched it and he really, really, really appreciated that episode. So that was nice. But and good luck on your Cursed Etten. Good old big 4-year-old mini. But the Cursed Ettens are coming to Total War now, which is real exciting. Let's see, we got Biofoot. The new look and organization is great. Should confuse the fishmen for a few weeks at least. Does Morslib affects those on/under the sea? It should, very much so, because I mean it's a moon.
Yeah, it's one of the great things that's easy to forget is that the very tides themselves are influenced by the moon. So is there influence? Yes. And is that influence probably larger than is generally reflected in the lore? Yes. But we will get to that when we start diving through many of the specifics about what does happen on Geheimnistag and Geheimnisnacht.
Fiddle Cashflow, the prodigal beards return. Prodigal, yeah.
I was actually half tempted because of Lorebeards to regrow my beard long again. During COVID, I was so ill I couldn't do anything, and that included just trimming my beard. I was that ill because I got COVID so badly. And my beard went down to about this long. Now, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, you can't see me gesticulating like I have a pair of breasts in front of the camera. But it was really quite long, a big beard. If you go back to some of the old Inside the Rookery episodes that you can find on Rookery Publications YouTube account, you'll find some really dodgy ones with me with a huge beard going, hey, 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 hey. I'm half tempted to do that again, but I probably won't. I quite like my little short beard as it currently stands.
Yeah, I am definitely in desperate need of a trim, but it's been good busy, but I've been fucking swamped the last little while. Dopey Dumbo and Law and Rytech make you sound like very professional and trustworthy cyberpunk companies. Yes, because cyberpunk companies are notorious for being trustworthy.
On that, I just completed Cyberpunk again for the I don't know how many times because when Lindsay was really ill, I had a little bit of time where I had very little to do, but I had to be right beside her and I couldn't go out to my work PC. And I was finding it really difficult to work on my iPad. So I just sat down and played some games for a few days and completed Cyberpunk again. But it was the first time I completed Phantom of Liberty, which I hadn't done yet. And it was very good to see Idris Elba doing his Idris Elba thing. Enjoyed that immensely. I'm going to go for Anlaw. If I was writing for Cyberpunk, I'd probably add it.
Yeah, Anlaw and Rytech, they do sound like
sounds good.
Yeah, those are good sci-fi company names.
I might respell it to TECH though.
Yes, yeah, that way it sounds like they actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Gideon, if casting in Warhammer requires vocalization, but Slann communicate telepathically, do they constantly do near silent mumbling to keep in the network? I actually know the answer to this one. So the Slann, as they're presented in like the various stories where it covers them, they do speak, but they have a very unique set of vocalizations that they rely on because most forms of language in Warhammer that goes for magic come from specific sources, being that you either come from the elven side or you come from the demonic side. But the Slann learned like at the feet of the old ones themselves and have like this very unique relationship that they built with it and were designed for it. They do speak, but it doesn't sound like you would expect. It's going to sound, because Warhammer is very goofy sometimes with some of the way it does. It often describes it as almost like burps or ribbits or like these very loud croaks. They do vocalize actually a lot, but you probably wouldn't recognize it as a language.
Yeah, completely. One of the reasons that telepathic communication is a core component of what Slann are is hard-coded into what the Warhammer world offers, which is that sound shapes magic. and Slan are enormously magical. So every single sound that they make has potential implications. Every utterance can do something. Telepathic communication is probably the only safe way that they can easily communicate without being very careful about how they enunciate. But when they cast, yeah, sure, all spells, generally speaking, require it. But as is often the case in Warhammer lore, every time you make some sort of rule, all spells must be vocalized. There's some idiot out there going, I don't, though. So you'll probably find there's lots of manifestations where that isn't the case, including many Slan who can just spin great wonders without making anything beyond, I don't know, a rumbling fart. But they still manage to get their great artifacts of the old ones to do their thing using magic. But broadly speaking, yeah, they make noises. Burp, burp. Yeah. Go listen to the Frog Chorus by Paul McCartney. Burp, burp, burp. I recommend it. It's just full of Slan. That entire video, which is a cartoon, completely rejigs if you imagine that they are all just Slan.
Yep. Yeah. Just imagine they're just destroying like legions of poor souls with every articulation. The Exiled one. Cheers, lads. Can't hang around, but I will definitely watch you guys later. Hey, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming by.
See you later. Really appreciate that and enormously thankful.
Colonel 94, a Geheimnisnacht episode, even though it's not Halloween. Such is the power of Nagash. Nagash does not need holidays. Man.
I mean, it's been an interesting few weeks at this end. Let's just sum it up with that.
Gideon, has Andy read the new CA short story? I don't think he has, or have you? I don't know if you've had time for it yet.
No, I'm purposely avoiding it because we tend to like to do streams on these things. And I like to do it just beforehand so that all my rage, my nerd rage, is fresh. If I've read it like 3 weeks ago, what you will get is a fake version of my nerd rage, which will be just me going, it's bullshit, it's shit, like normal, rather than the actually, or alternatively, my gushing praise will be much more direct and, well, fresh. So I haven't read it yet. I intend to read it when we do something funky and cool in Dakala.
Yeah, so we will probably stay tuned for this. We'll probably have like a sort of bonus-ish episode where we get caught up on everything for Tides of Torment here soon.
Yeah, we've got some plans. I also have my birthday coming up at the start of December. And it sort of clashes with our standard Lorebeards timings. So we're probably going to do some streams around it, assuming that Ryan and I can find the best dates that work for both of us, because I don't want to fall behind again, because we've got a lot of shit to cover, particularly for Tides of Torment.
Yeah, I really liked it, but there was a major issue. They didn't refer to Bao the Ogre being swarmed by a gaggle of peasants.
Okay, my nerd rage is already rising.
the gaggles. Luigi Super, Andy, you were right about CA. No High Elf Takala. Yeah, so this has been kind of interesting to watch from the sidelines of that. The promotional stuff for Takala has been very, very careful not to call her an elf. Now, it hasn't said what she is. They just leave it very vague and mysterious and don't call her an elf. But this is something that is almost assuredly being handed down by GW from on high, of that things have changed a lot about how, like, what the like core rules of the setting are since the days when Dakala was initially pinned down.
Correct. I mean, Dakala is all the way from 5th edition. And as 6th edition embedded in, and elves became much more what the elves are today, Dakala became a historical character. And then we've got, obviously, CA coming along and mining all of those historical characters and bringing them into the world of 8th edition Warhammer. And in 8th edition Warhammer, elves don't mutate. And before you say, Ariel, she's a big butterfly woman, not a mutant. It's something different. Yeah, elves don't mutate, at least not physically. Mentally, they can still mutate. They can become crazy, effectively. They can go really weird. And it's not crazy as in my brain is unstable and weird. Their minds literally mutate into something strange and weird. That can occur. And they can lose themselves to the depredations of the ruinous powers that way. But their physical forms don't mutate. And that leaves us in a very strange place with Dakala. Games Workshop have clearly decided that Dakala, Nana, can't be an elf because they don't mutate. So let's just not mention it at all. Fair enough. Could they build a good story? Well, yeah, Games Workshop are constantly contradicting themselves. They're constantly creating hard rules and saying, and here's the exception that almost proves the rule. And whether that's elves that suddenly have mustaches and pointy beards in some comics, whether that is looking at what used to be the rules for Geheimnisnacht and completely changing it in a later Warhammer 8th edition book, there's lots of things that Games Workshop have rewritten at various points. And I see no reason why Dekala can't be that special, unique character that is different. But clearly they decided that's probably not going to be the case, which means that we have ourselves the vague version that CA is currently presenting, which I imagine with a later edition could very easily be pinned down as somebody else tries to answer it. It's very likely a different team will pick this up, though, and just answer it themselves. Having seen it in CA, it's likely that, say, for example, over in the old world, someone will say, well, can we have Dekala? Well, yeah, we can. She's an elf from freaking years ago. And they'll just call her an elf. And then suddenly, one team will be in contradiction to another team that said you can't do that, because Games Workshop tends to be a host of separate islands, and those teams don't always communicate, meaning that I can see this basically being a non-issue within a year or two, maybe even 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I will note that as obviously someone that's knee-deep in all of the new content at the moment, doing lots of streams on that, and I'll be streaming it later today as well. Dekala is not... They don't delve into her backstory and like say, this is what she is. They literally just say, it's a mystery. And they leave it at that.
Yep, makes sense.
Brock 6000, hi Jets, good to see you. Are there any known Geheimnisnacht songs or children's songs? Seems like a perfect subject for those types of old warnings.
Specifically, no. Would there be? Yes.
Yeah. So actually a good example of this is if you go watch the original Vampire Counts trailer for Total War, they have what is very obviously like a childlike voice or light feminine voice singing London Bridge is Falling Down, which doesn't exist in the setting, but the song would exist because it's a popular song. So they would put it in. There's actually some good examples of, some people have noticed that if you read through like the Lords of Stone and Steel Omnibus or the Dwarf Omnibus released by Black Library, there are some songs that are pinned in, and some very, very smart people have figured out that the like the cadence and like the wordplay in the songs is actually 1-to-1 to certain Tolkien dwarf songs. So like there are songs that they're meant to be sung to, but because the setting doesn't often, it's usually just dealing with fighting. It's not as much dealing with like full-on world building. Would there be stuff like this? Yes. Is it currently pinned down in explicit detail? Not really.
No. And if I was still doing the job, that's the sort of shit that I love adding, because I'm a big fan of poetry. I remember having a conversation with Steve Darlington about this some time ago. He's another writer who's worked on 2nd edition and 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and he rather proudly stated that he was the only writer that made sure there was poetry in every single pieces of his work, meaning that he was the only one who added it. To which I replied, I think you'll find you're wrong. My very first piece of writing had poetry, and almost every piece of writing I've done from that point onwards has always had some sort of literary reference or piece of poetry or a song or something added. To which he went, oh, wow. Yeah, good times.
Hey, good company, right?
Totally.
Gideon, so to clarify the slung question, isn't the telepathic communication in and of itself magic? If so, are there a lot of vocalizations that allow them to continue said telepathy? Okay, so that's a sticky question. Is telepathy magic? Kinda.
So there are various ways to answer this, and the cleanest answer is how Games Workshop answer it, which is they use telepathy.
Yeah.
Now that's a non-answer because they don't explain how that works. This is normally where the roleplay game comes in and says, "Aha! This is how all of it works. This is how the nitty-gritty of the loose descriptions that we get over in the war game actually work if you want to play this or to portray it as a games master." So that's normally where we get the deets, but no, we don't have the deets over there either. So loosely speaking, we have to come up with our own answers using the setting as it stands. Now, are there types of magic that don't count as magic? Yes. There's all manner of capabilities and things that various species have and various groups have that look magical to humans because humans dictate telepathy is magic, but to that species are just the norm. Does it seem very likely that Slan just communicate this way? Yes, almost certainly bioengineered to do it that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. If I was writing them today, I would probably just say it is a species trait. It's how they communicate. One of the ways they communicate, because of the dangers, the inherent dangers of their very existence, should they start burbling away out loud and then winds of magic attached to those words, because they're so extraordinarily magical. It is just not the best way for them to communicate, which means the old ones themselves went, well, don't worry, you just do what we do. Ping! You now communicate telepathically. So it's not necessarily tied to magic. And I'd probably go in that direction. But the real answer is it's not properly described. So you can come up with your own answer if you want.
Yeah, I would very much agree with Andy that telepathy is not a spell, and it is not a form of spell casting, at least as far as the vast majority of the lore is concerned. Now, you might come across various individuals that are able to cast spells seemingly silently, but there's usually some sort of mechanism or device or some other thing that's like supplementing the spoken part of the process. Because there are ways to unleash magic without speaking, but it usually requires a item or some preparation or a ritual. But it can be done.
Yeah, totes.
All right, we got two more, and then we're gonna get into Geheimnisnacht. Jipapuli, that is something I've been confused on. Isn't her elf origin just one of the possible origins? Yes, that is. When you read like if you go watch our Dakala Lorebeards stream, which was a really good one, we had a lot of fun with that. That one, we do talk about how, like, in the Liber Chaotica and even in her original book, it talks about that she is incredibly old, and because of that, there's a lot of like different legends. But the one they give us is one that I think is like carved on a monolith somewhere in the Chaos Waste. And it's like, this is the story of Dakala according to this particular monolith. So you could argue that it's just not true, and that Dakala's actually got a different backstory. And that's just the most famous one that is like perpetuated around the globe, because some like random scholar found it and took the story with him back to the Empire or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, right from the very first iteration, it was pretty much black and white, quite literally, in an army list where they went, this is Dakala, this is where she comes from, she doesn't take much space in the book, we're done, bye! And later iterations of her have said, well, she might be something different, and that's going to particularly be the case as we press on from this point, because her elf origin is just somewhat it sort of doesn't fit with the current elf background. So thus, people are trying to muddy it up. And different writers will muddy that up in different ways. Some by saying, some say she's an elf. Others say she's just a very elf-like human. Yes, that's what she is, which in some respects I think really diminishes the character. And I really hope that that's not where it eventually lands. But yeah, her origins, yeah, they can be full of ambiguity if you wish, but it was pretty clear at the beginning.
Yeah, or you can ascribe to the Lorebeards idea, which is that she is an elf, but she's not a mutant. There's something else going on there. Go check out our Lorebeards stream. Go watch that.
Yeah, go watch that. We did Dakala. We did Dakala, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We did a whole big old episode on her.
My earlier comment, well, you've got some stuff to do with Dakala. We have. I completely forgot we did
already
that.
did it.
We've already done that. God, I'm getting old.
Yeah,
that's what I mean, just at the start of December, I will be turning 50. Watch out, everyone. It's coming to you too. You might think you're young. I still feel like I'm in my 20s, but hell no. 50. Where did that come from?
He's just gonna,
moving on quickly.
We're just going to turn the stream on. His beard's just going to be like off screen and white. Just the day of.
Santa beard.
Watchdog, on the topic of Dakala, would the better word be transcend or ascend? As far as yeah, that that will have to be something you discover on your own, perhaps, because I don't think that's something we can give you.
If you haven't already watched Dog, oh cripes! How am I going to pronounce that last part? I'm not Watchdog.
Lock to. But all right, okay, last one, and then we gotta get into the intro. Holy Artist.
Okay.
Cheerio. Isn't Geheimnisnacht just Warhammer Halloween, but actually scary and a lot less candy?
Well, how about we go into our intro and find out?
Perfect.
That was perfect, Ryan. Okay, so Geheimnisnacht. What the hell is Geheimnisnacht? Now, many of you already know what Geheimnisnacht is, but if you're coming to Geheimnisnacht for the first time, it just sounds like a bit of a word rumbly mess, particularly if you don't speak German, which I don't. So my pronunciation is probably terrible, but Geheimnisnacht, the Night of Mystery, is something that's been a part of Warhammer and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So that's both the fantasy battle game and the roleplay game, almost since the beginning, but not quite. So let's dial back in time, as you know I love to do, when we're discussing where the various terms from Warhammer came from and where they were first introduced. Geheimnisnacht was first introduced when the Imperial Calendar was made. So what is the Imperial Calendar? The Imperial Calendar is how the Warhammer year works for the Empire, which is, as many of you know, one of the core realms inside the Warhammer world and the core focus for almost like 90% of the writing is involved in and around the Empire, to the point that when they did the sequel game, they just went, the God of the Empire? Yeah, that's the God of all Warhammer. Ha! As we go with Age of Sigmar that follows afterwards. And Geheimnisnacht is a part of just the Empire's calendar as a name. Geheimnisnacht is just used in the Empire, nowhere else. It's not a term that's used anywhere else in the Warhammer world, just the Empire. Indeed, there's multiple different names for Geheimnisnacht, depending upon whether you are an elf, a dwarf, or maybe you come from Tilia or Estalia, maybe you come from Norska. They've all got their own terms for this night of mystery, this day of mystery. But what happens here? What's going on? Well, when the Warhammer calendar was first created, which was for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition and the Enemy Within campaign. So the Enemy Within campaign is a big, huge, sprawling campaign that takes place over 5 books for the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Recently got updated for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, and if you want to watch a really crazy, bonkers version of it, that's what we do over in LAWhammer, if you didn't know already. And back in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition, they created a calendar. And the calendar they created had 400 days long, because as we know, everything in Warhammer is bigger than everything in the real world. We can't be happy with 365 days. Hell no, we've got 400. And our 400 days are split into 12 months. So maybe not everything is bigger. Each month having approximately 32 or 33 days each. And in between these 12 months are special intercalary days, 6 of them. And an intercalary day means a day that lies outside of the months. So you might go, for example, if it's a real world one, 1st of January up to the 31st of January. Then we have a special day called Geheimnisnacht. And then we go to the 1st of February. It's a day that sits in between. Now, this is something that happens in a few ancient calendars. The Egyptian calendar, for example, has got the ancient Egyptian calendar has got intercalary days, which were associated to different gods that just sat at the end of their year. So the Warhammer world's got 6 of them, and one of them is Geheimnisnacht, the Day of Mystery. And the Day of Mystery happens right in the middle of the year. So 6 months come, and on the 6th month, which is called Vorgeheim, before Geheim, before mystery, we have, after the 6th month, Geheimnisnacht. Then we go into Nachtgeheim, after Geheimnisnacht, after the Day of Mystery. So we have a special intercalary day that sits in the very center of the Warhammer calendar in the Empire. And that is Geheimnisnacht. It's a special day. It's a festival day, you could argue. Except it's a little bit darker than that. As we discussed over on our Morsleep stream, Warhammer World has a big, fat chaos moon that floats around in the sky, being an absolute arse, screwing with everybody's shit. It's almost certainly a gigantic chunk of warpstone that was spat out of the northern Chaos Gate way back during the Cataclysm when the gates exploded. And it's errant. It sort of goes around, and it's a little bit random. Sometimes if you are sitting in the Warhammer world, which of course we all do, at nighttime, it'll just be a tiny, slightly greenish dot that's making its way across the sky, barely perceptible. Perhaps in one of the phases, a new moon or a full moon, whatever it might be in the distance, but tiny. Other times, it will look really close. It has a counterpart, Man's-Lieb, which is the normal looking moon. It just looks like our moon. It's super easy to figure out that one. That's Man's-Lieb. Sometimes Mars-Lieb is much, much closer than Man's-Lieb. And I don't necessarily mean it's closer and thus bigger. Sometimes it's smaller because it's a smaller moon in general, but it's much closer than Man's-Lieb sits. And sometimes it's so big in the sky, it makes Man's-Lieb look small. Now, the reason that Geheimnisnacht is important, so the night of Geheimnistag, the reason it's important is because every year, without fail, Mars-Lieb is close to the Warhammer world, and it's big, and it's full. And no matter where you are in the Warhammer world, this is the case. Now, in the Empire, it's called Geheimnisnacht, the Day of Mysteries, because weird things happen when Mars-Lieb gets full, particularly because if there's any bad guys out there wanting to do bad guy things, like, for example, I'm a Chaos Cultist. Hi, I'm Bob the Chaos Cultist. Hello, everyone. Bob the Chaos Cultist. I would like to do a big ritual, which is going to open a Chaos Gate because I'm an idiot. And I'm going to open this Chaos Gate by tearing a hole directly through to the realm of chaos. I'm going to let demons come through because that's a really good idea. Me and my chums, who are also idiots, are going to get together to do this. But we tried it last week. Complete failure. No go. There just wasn't enough magic. Arse. So we tried it the week after. Still didn't work. However, on Geheimnisnacht, when Mars-Lieb is full, magic waxes and grows very strong. Meaning that if you're a bad guy wanting to do bad guy things, a Chaos Cultist wanting to open, for example, a rent into the realm of chaos, then Geheimnisnacht is the perfect night to try it. And you'll find that computer games have even used this. So, for example, Dark Omen runs on Geheimnisnacht when Mars-Lieb goes full and they do a big ritual. Ooh!
Mm. Yeah, poor Bob, man. He's lost it after the divorce.
You can't talk about Bob guy. I mean, Bob. Oh,
can't fill all the holes in your life with dark rituals.
Vermintide uses it all over the place as well. It's, in fact, Geheimnisnacht is used by games all over the place. But as we will discuss, writers sometimes like to have a little bit more freedom with this. We'll get to that in a moment. So that's where Geheimnisnacht comes from. It's a special intercalary day that was added during Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 in The Enemy Within, the very first campaign ever written for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And that's where it was codified. But that's not where it became popular. It became popular because of Gotrek and Felix. Now, there's a reason to call this out, because Geheimnisnacht is not the only night that Mars-Lieb is always full. But it's the only one most Warhammer writers remember. It's also worth noting there's another night called Hexensnacht, or the Night of Witches. It's a day that is beloved to more because Mars-Lieb's in the sky and really death happens and witches do crazy stuff. It's basically Geheimnisnacht Mark II. And when does this happen? New Year's Day. So the first day in the Warhammer calendar is Hexenstag, which means we go from the end of the year, we're in deep winter, into Hexenstag, and then we start with the first day of the year, Yardrung, right? The beginning of the year. So we actually have two special days, and I'm bringing this up now because everything that we say for Geheimnisnacht applies to Hexensnacht as well. It just has different festivals attached to it in different parts of the Empire. In the Empire, Hexenstag comes with lots of festivals to ward out all the awfulness that's likely to occur that night. The Walking Dead are very common to stir, for example, on Hexensnacht. So all kinds of rituals are done, and most people beat their door up. Been a long few weeks. They board up their doors and hide within their various hovels or inns or whatever. Some places have big festivals and parties where they get so drunk that they don't need to worry about the rising full moon of Mars-Lieb out there. But that's Hexenstag and Hexensnacht, 6 months away from Geheimnisnacht. But it's been forgotten. Why? Because there wasn't a Gotrek and Felix novel, well, short story, called Hexensnacht. If there had been, we'd probably be discussing Hexensnacht right now, not Geheimnisnacht. But Geheimnisnacht was pretty much the first Gotrek and Felix story that everyone knows. So thus, it's ingrained into so many Warhammer fans' minds. Because it's the night when that pair get caught up with a bunch of bad guys doing bad guy things in a dark circle. And you haven't read it, go read the story. It's great. Or alternatively, go join our Lorebeards book club, which will be starting very soon. More about that in a forthcoming episode of Lorebeards. Yeah, I totally did that. So,
no, very smart, very good.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's always an excuse to discuss our other streams of Lorebeards. So, what does this all mean if we're summing all this part up? We've got ourselves a day that is always followed by a night where Morsleib rises full. Now, you might just go, well, that means Morsleib is not erratic because it's predictable. Every 6 months, it just is always full on this day. Yeah, no. Its orbit is utterly erratic beyond this. At any other day in the year, it might be full, it might be small, it might be big, it might be sitting as an incredibly thin crescent moon, it might be a half moon. Who knows what Morsleib's going to do on any given night? Most of the year, it's distant, small, and tiny, and most people just ignore it. But at any time, Morsleib can rise full. And to be slightly annoying, when Morsleib rises full, it doesn't necessarily rise full everywhere. Because Morsleib is an erratic orbit and an erratic appearance. It might be full in one town and a crescent moon in the next, and a half moon just 20 miles away from there. Looking different no matter where you come from, because Morsleib reacts with the winds of magic that permeate through the Warhammer world, and how it appears is to a degree influenced by that. And when magic rises massively, so does Morsleib's appearance in the sky, where every night it can often look full. And that's often the case when we head towards one of the great incursions of chaos. When chaos comes, Morsleib is often full night after night after night, because there's so much magic that's how Morsleib appears through all of that magic if you happen to be sitting down on the ground.
Yeah, if you're an Imperial citizen and you notice outside that Morsleib, maybe not directly over you, but somewhere nearby is full night after night, that is your indication of, oh, those chaos guys are up to something. Something's going on out there. Bob's up to it again.
Where's Bob? And what's he doing with the moon?
Bob's doing shit over the head.
So, that's what Geheimnisnacht was. It was a special once-a-year event. And Trollslayer had them going out on Geheimnisnacht, which was a bad idea. And we got to have our story. But because of that story, Geheimnisnacht, unlike many of the terms in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, got picked up and used again and again in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It popped up in White Dwarf. It popped up in computer games. It popped up all over the place. Hexensnacht is often forgotten about, but Geheimnisnacht isn't. And that means that it is then subject to writer editing. Now, as we've discussed in multiple episodes of Lorebeards, Games Workshop does not have a central lore Bible where everything that is made clear. And if you're a writer for Games Workshop, you receive said lore Bible and you know what you can and you can't do. No, there is no such thing. All there is the current edition of the game. The current edition of the game is what is referenced. So the current edition of the game, if you happen to be writing the game, has no reference other than what you want to write. And this became a thing for Geheimnisnacht because in Fantasy Battle, in the good old Chaos army list, they decided Geheimnisnacht wasn't a once-a-year event. No. Geheimnisnacht was whenever Morsleib rose full. Now, not only does this change the date of it, a once-a-year event, to a whenever it happens event, because we know it can happen at any time anyway. So it didn't contradict what happens with Morsleep. It just changed its name from being a once-a-year event to multiple times a year. And Hexenstag is probably called Geheimnisnacht too. Sure, let's just do that. That makes life easy. It didn't just change that. It also made it sort of universal. So the Empire name of it became sort of the name for it no matter where you were. If you were up in Norska, it's Geheimnisnacht. Why? They don't speak Reichspiel. They wouldn't call it the Night of Mystery, because that's what it means. I mean, what?
Geheimnisnacht.
It's Geheimnisnacht. That's what it is. And that's what it is from this point onwards. And the lore changed because the current edition of the game, that was 8th edition Warhammer, is the core lore. And that caused me a huge problem because I was writing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, the Enemy Within update, and I had to make a calendar. And the calendar for Warhammer is super clear. Vorgeheim and Nachtgeheim sit around Geheimnisnacht that single day. But the army list that I can't contradict says something different. So I asked Games Workshop, WTF do I do? Because we have established clear lore that makes sense, and we have an army list that contradicts it. How do we handle this? And as Games Workshop is often wont to do, it said, well, yeah, They had a wee chat at their side, and then they said, well, yeah, okay, fair enough. The army list is, it exists. Actually, no, just write it like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1. I pitched that as one of the ways to resolve it. So in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, it goes back to the original description. And it doesn't in any way reference the Chaos Army list at all. It pretends it doesn't exist because, let's just sort of fudge it. It's a little bit like Decala being an elf. Let's just not think about that too hard. And that was how it was resolved. Basically, Geheimnisnacht always being the full moon Morsleep night was sort of pushed under the carpet for the role-playing game. But that doesn't mean it has been entirely, because the end is huge. It's a really, really big place. It's far bigger than Germany or the Holy Roman Empire, or indeed, it's bigger than almost all of Europe. It's a really big space. It's one of the reasons why it's so ethnically diverse. It's because it's a much, much bigger place than just Germany. Which means that everywhere is going to have its own traditions. And this was something that had already been written into Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in the 2nd edition, where it makes it quite clear that every part of the Empire has its own names for things and has its own colloquial terms for things, and they export them to other parts of the world all the time. And that became sort of the behind the scenes, that's going to fudge it answer, which is, it's what colloquially a lot of people call any night where Morsleep rises. When Morsleep rises full, it's like, oh shit, it's Geheimnisnacht again. Oh, awful. However, it's a shit rationalization. It's not a good one. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because out of the two nights, Geheimnisnacht and Hexennacht, Hexennacht is worse. Why? Because it's longer.
Yeah.
Geheimnisnacht is in high summer. It's a short. If you're in the north, it only lasts for about 3 hours. It's really short. Geheimnisnacht doesn't last long. But in deep winter, if you're in the north, it lasts for like 20 hours. It lasts for freaking forever. Hexennacht is the worst. So if they're going to export any term, it would probably be Hexennacht. But don't think about it too heavily, because today we're discussing Geheimnisnacht. What is it? How does it manifest? What happens on Hexennacht? How is it predictable? Why does it happen every single year at this point? What are the mechanics? Are there any mechanics? Have Games Workshop answered this? Or have they just left it up in the air like they often do? Open doors of lore for later writers to potentially fill with interesting stories. We're going to be covering all that and more. And of course, this is our very late Halloween episode, so I shall conclude my introduction with spooky.
Got him. There we go. Got him. Yeah, so there's a lot. We're gonna get caught up on Super Chat stuff, and then we're gonna dive into it because there's quite a bit to talk about. Actually, that this is one of those big things that ultimately it's really cool, and it's one of those things that every Warhammer fan knows about. But also, depending on where you learn about it, you're going to get different answers, which is not ideal, but is Warhammer. So, as you do. Cole Patterson, with the elf devotee units now in Total War Warhammer, it makes me ask them, in the modern lore, would you actually find whole armies of elves completely devoted to Slaanesh?
The Warhammer world is a really big place, and the things that we have yet to examine in lore are almost certainly out there somewhere. Are there armies of elves that have decided that, yes, Slaanesh is the correct way forward? I think it's not unlikely. Equally, are there different types of elves? Feral elves, weird elves, those elves, that elves. Yeah, all these things exist. The army lists only focus upon the core stuff that they make. High elves, wood elves, dark elves. There'll be others in the same way that the Empire is a massively complicated place with loads and loads of human army types, but all they deal with is a basic state army. And they forget that the Empire has state army cavalry. They're never in any of the Empire army lists. Basically, just normal horsemen, state army cavalry. They exist and are in multiple novels in various places. Not nobles, not knightly orders, just normal cavalry. Are they forgotten? Yes. And in a similar fashion, you generally don't get this sort of army until, of course, you go to, say, the elven, very closely, Slaaneshi army that you find inside Storm of Chaos book, which has quite a lot of elf influence in it. So will we get it? Yeah, probably somewhere. And it's somewhere that Games Workshop could easily develop into without contradicting anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say it would be very, very... It would be... I would find it strange not to find an army of elves somewhere in the world that's dedicated to Slaanesh. Of like, think about like when people are faced with oblivion or madness or horrors beyond comprehension, some people will embrace it as a hopes to just deal with it. Like they just break under it. So I think it'd be silly to suggest that they just don't exist.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a tiny little comment here as well. Sea elves are just high elves. I mean, as it currently stands, they're just high elves. And it's, yeah, sure, they might have a different character to some other high elves, but that's a little bit like saying that people from London have got a different character from people from Liverpool. Yeah, of course they do. Okay, but they're still English. But yeah, sea elves are just high elves.
Gideon, speaking of poetry and songs, do you usually assume that the versions we see aren't the exact literal translation because they probably wouldn't rhyme?
I don't worry about that shit. I'm much more interested in creating something that's interesting and exciting to read here and now. If I was writing, for example, some elven poetry, I would definitely add a note about this. But when it's things like, say, for example, the Empire, no, I'm fucking writing it in English and that's it. And it's going to rhyme in English and that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I would say this would kind of be one of those things that if you're like GMing and you're wanting to make your world as realistic possible, you know, that's a burden you're going to shoulder going into that particular topic of that. Okay, this is gonna be extra work for me, but I'm gonna make this work because that's how the setting would probably realistically feel. But that's kind of how in the same thing of like if you're realistically dealing with the Empire, it's gonna have a lot more diversity than you see on the tabletop. And even though everyone speaks Reichspiel, you're probably gonna have different dialects of Reichspiel all of this other stuff, and it's gonna get really complicated really quick. Which the core setting just doesn't want to deal with. So it just doesn't.
Completely.
Bohemian Snacksity. Ryan, you said in a previous stream that you went to Leeds. I'm from Leeds. What did you get up to and what did you think of the city? So I was there. Yeah. I was there to see a buddy of mine. And it was super nice. It definitely felt like She kind of described it to me when we were agreeing to meet there as kind of like it feels almost like a new city. And I would say it definitely has that vibe where a lot of the buildings feel like really new and fresh, and there's tons of young people and stuff. I was there right after November the 5th, and like I remember the train station was full of people in costumes. And we went to the museum for I think medical science, which was like halfway kind of cool, interesting stuff, and halfway like horror exhibits about the history of medicine, and that was super fun. So there was a lot of cool museums. We also went to a few bars. It was really nice. I liked Leeds a lot. It felt like it was trying to appeal to like young adult demographic, which at the time being in my I think I was in my late 20s at that point. It was really nice. It was one of those places that I would love to. I don't know if I'd want to live there per se, but I definitely would enjoy visiting it on a regular basis. It was cool. Bear Mattel, off topic, real quick. Nehakaran City's tier list possible. Yep, that's definitely
certainly possible.
Definitely likely at some point. Gideon, it would be interesting if the Dragon Emperor was like, I remember when there were 460 days, since the planet is now much closer to the sun than it was in his era.
Yeah, I think 460 days is as good a number as any. The Warhammer solar system, as in the primary sun and all of the planets, were all moved. Every single last part. It wasn't just the Warhammer world. And they were all moved into a set of very perfect orbits. One planet goes in 1 year, the next one goes in 2 years, the next one goes in 4 years. The one on the inside goes in half a year. You get the idea. Meaning that the planets line up in perfect synchronicity once every, so I think it's 800 years. Can't remember off the top of my head. With Obscuria, right, the furthest out planet. I can't remember how long its orbit is. Maybe 1,600 years. I should remember this. I freaking wrote it. But regardless, it was all put into a fixed orbit. And yes, beforehand, it wasn't like that. It was a typical solar system with different orbits, planets sitting in different ways, some of them out of alignment, some of them with slightly elliptical orbits rather than almost spherical ones. Circular ones, I mean. So yeah, I think that is a real thing, and it's not just the Dragon Emperor; it's his kids as well.
Yeah, there should be a funny thing somewhere where like the Celestial Dragon Emperor is like, I miss leap years. Leap years were so nice.
Yeah, when things were different.
Stephen Lucas already chatted to Sotek, but check out Kirby Air Riders. It has my favorite depiction of an old one factory. Monkey paws,
Kirby
obvious
Air Riders.
as it's a cat clock. I don't understand the part in brackets, but I am very excited for the new Kirby Air Riders game because I loved the first one.
I've not bought it yet, and I buy everything, so I'm a little bit surprised. I didn't.
Yeah, I'm very curious that this one seems to have an actual story. So I need to get into it. But like, literally,
cool. I'll give that a look out. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Yeah, literally anything that Sakurai's touched, I will try. That man's a genius when it comes to game design. Gideon, what do you think Geheimnisnacht and Hexenstein are like in Tluxlon? We actually know the answer to this. I imagine it's like air raid sirens, everyone man magical defenses. Essentially, it is. It is Geheimnisnacht and Hexenstein are really, really bad times in Lustria because Lustria is a very magically saturated land. The Slaanesh have made it more magically saturated, and there are a lot of scars and wounds left over from the Cataclysm, and they all get ripped back open. So notably, like the city of Zahotek, the city of echoes, where there's a demon portal or a portal to the realm of chaos beneath the city, it opens much wider and big demonic legions come pouring out. And so there's notes that every time that time of year, Krokar leads the Saurus defenders against the demonic legions to keep them not let them like get out of the city and cause further chaos. But Tluxlon, I mean, they fight a literal war with the Chaos Moon itself. So that is a time of year where they have like big rituals and are casting huge spells. And Morslib very possibly is doing its own things to mess with them because it's vaguely sentient, which go check out our Morslib episode where it's a little less vaguely and more just explicitly. But yeah, it's a busy night of the year.
Yeah. In fact, I would suggest that very possibly Slashland and the Lizardmen in a whole are one of the core reasons that we have ourselves a cycle of Morsleep. In that they are the ones holding it back. They are doing all manner of crazy rituals to stop Morsley basically coming down and ruining everything. Because, hey, you know, a gigantic Chaos Moon landing on the Warhammer world, that's not going to be dangerous or anything. And the Lizardmen are sitting there chanting away, unlike Bob, who's trying to do something really stupid. The Lizardmen are doing their very best to hold that moon at bay. And it seems very likely that this is the event where they bounce out a bit. Because it does happen. We know they do that. And the actual mechanics of what they do, that's kind of vague. We just know it happens. But because we know they're doing that, and we know that there is a single consistent cycle for Morsleep, 2 days a year, it is always full. Other times it's all over the place. And it might be full, it might not be full. It makes sense to mesh those two things together because they are also on a cycle doing their best to keep it back. So it seems to make sense that that is the 2 nights where they are at their hardest, working like the Lizardmen that they are, to hold the moon back, as it makes it yet another attempt to crash through what is effectively the gigantic magical barrier that they've put up in place to keep the moon away.
Yeah, there's also the notes when we talked about it, Morslib, in that stream as well, where you have like the Everqueen does her 10-year pilgrimage to where she goes to some place over in End, where she unleashes this big ritual that pushes Morslib further away from the planet than it otherwise would be. There are quite a few forces at bay trying to keep that moon out.
For good reason. It's freaking awful. We're going to be covering just how awful it can be.
Yes, we are. Necroplaner, congrats on the dedicated channel debuts, y'all. I'm so happy to see how far y'all have come. When y'all sit down to talk about sat down to talk about Malekith 2 years ago, do you think y'all would get this far as content creators?
No.
I did not think Lorebeards would become what it's starting to become, which is really exciting, and hopefully it keeps happening. Obviously, we're on the very first step of a new staircase, but no.
I mean, I turned up for a bit of a laugh, and let's be honest, the pair of us got quite a shock as to the response that Lorebeards got, because it changed swiftly over the course of just like 4, 5, 6 shows, where to begin with, it was just us chatting, and then it was something that was worthwhile for both of us because it was making money. And I'm going to thank you specifically, not just because you've thrown a super chat at us, but because you've thrown a super chat at us. It's working because you do this. Because you come in and you directly communicate with us and we directly communicate back. And we love the lore. We would normally have just been sitting our own, I don't know, buy a console playing games or buy a PC playing games and gathering all this information for nothing, or just writing it for somebody else. This entire thing has changed us. We do things differently than we would have done previously. We've got ourselves sort of a company of people all gathered together, discussing lore, having fun. And that's because of you. This wouldn't have happened otherwise. I'd have probably done like 3 or 4 streams and we'd have bunked out and done something else. But we didn't, because you demanded we do more and more. And here we are, continuing 2 years later, and hopefully for many more years to come.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey. And like Andy said, like it was like, obviously the show had been, we had experimented with doing different things before Andy came on for the first time, and it was fun, but not really anything like super crazy. And then when Andy came on, it was just like someone just turned a light bulb on, or like the perfect match was struck. And it was like, oh, this is different. And you know, now we're hoping to share that with, you know, the some of the other creators that we brought on with us to like expand and do more things. And it's really exciting, a little scary, but mostly really exciting. And you know, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, loving it.
Friend or Trader, how do demons take advantage of Geheimnisnacht? So big time. And this is actually a good little segue, and then we'll come back to some more super chats in a little bit. That, so one of the things that's specifically mentioned is that the Warhammer world one of the things that's a little spooky to think about, but is a true thing, is that it is a physical place that has a very thin, sometimes thicker, but often in the case of Warhammer Fantasy, fairly thin barrier between it and the ether. And there are a lot of things. Let me just interrupt
there to say that if you don't know the terminology, that's the realm of chaos where the chaos gods that are seeking to destroy everything is. And yeah, that means that there's a very thin skim between all those demons and not all those demons.
Yeah, and there are an infinite number of things that want to get through that very thin barrier into reality because they think reality's just great. It's super fun. They can manifest, they can eat souls, they can experience all sorts of crazy things that they can't normally, and it's just a great time for them. And it's not just demons, but it's also all sorts of weird little spirits. It's the undead. It's vague entities that come from deeper parts of the ether, nameless horrors, and all sorts of other bizarre things. And Geheimnisnacht is so spooky, as well as Hexensnacht, because it's when that barrier basically starts to shred. It's so thin that the lightest pressure can push through in a lot of places. So demons just, instead of it normally being like, oh, we don't sleep on a battlefield where horrible atrocities were committed last year and it's full of moldering corpses, because obviously that's a stupid idea, and there's lots of dar, and those corpses are going to get up and eat us in the night. You would go, well, that's silly, we're not going to do that. But you wouldn't think, well, if I'm home in my stone-walled city that's full of priests and blessed temples with a full garrison and all that, I don't have to worry about that. But on Geheimnisnacht, that's not true. And like in those bad places, it's just guaranteed to be bad, whereas it might be bad on a normal night. But even in the most civilized of places, this is the time of year where shit gets spooky for everyone. We have specific, so if we're focusing on demons for the moment, we'll talk more about like the undead and some other groups in a little bit. But demons are, on Geheimnisnacht in particular, can show up anywhere, which is so terrifying because it means that wherever you live, you have to do whatever you can do to be ready. So like you lock your doors, you put whatever plants and roots and berries and leaves and twigs you think might help over all of the different thresholds.
Pray to the gods.
Yeah, pray to the gods. If you make sacrifices to the gods, do anything and everything you could possibly think of to say, just ignore me, pass over me, don't pay attention to me. Like, you think of the biblical story where Moses is like, smear the lamb's blood over your threshold so the angel of death passes by your door. It's people trying to figure out, what do I need to do so the gods or the demons or whatever leave me the fuck alone? And obviously there's no guarantees. You just do your best.
Yeah. It is an exceedingly potentially dangerous night. And the mechanics behind it are pretty simple. And that's that the Warhammer world is saturated with magic. You're all aware of the winds of magic if you've been following for Warhammer for any length of time. This is the great winds that come from the chaos gates that permeate across the world, that blow, I suppose, and are then sucked from the world by a great vortex over Ulthuan where the elves live. And this magic is constantly coming into the world, sweeping through it and going out, coming in, sweeping through and coming out. And it goes through, loosely speaking, a great network of menhirs. It's big, massive stones that the elves constructed long ago on top of a site that the old ones constructed long before that, from the great geomantic web. And all this magic gets sucked along all these great ley lines and out into the vortex. When Morrslieb rises full, the amount of magic coming in is bigger and the volatility of that magic is much higher. When magic becomes volatile, the 8 winds become excited, it's very likely they merge. And when they merge, they form the black wind of magic, Dar. Now, most of you know a good chunk of this already, but it's worth reiterating just so we understand loosely the mechanics that's going on. Dar is black and icky. It looks like venom on a terrible day, should you be a wizard and capable of seeing it. So Venom from Spider-Man, if that wasn't a clean reference. It's all tarry and horrible and yuck, and it's also stupendously powerful. If you are a wizard that knows how to manipulate Dar, even if you're not a wizard that knows how to manipulate Dar sometimes, but if you're a wizard that knows how to manipulate Dar, if you draw from that, it's like the difference between drawing from a battery or the central power grid. It's so much more magic there. And Geheimnisnacht, when Morslieb is full, the winds are excited, there's much more Dar everywhere, meaning that wizards are capable of drawing upon it, meaning wizards of all types, not just bad guy wizards, but good guy wizards too, are in a position where they can draw much more magic. But almost always it goes along with Dar, which is tainting. If you channel Dar, it does things to your body. It not necessarily mutates you, but it corrupts you. There was a lovely set of rules in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 called Afflictions. If you want to go check those out, you get an idea of just how nasty Dar can be, because it's basically what those afflictions represent. Everything from you become cadaverous or weird, or you avoid the sun, or you start eating strange things like teeth. Crunch, crunch, crunch. You become weird. Dar corrupts your soul, and it often makes you power hungry. Most demonologists and necromancers who need Dar to fuel their magic are corrupted by it. So all of that magic is everywhere, but magic is not a static thing that only wizards use. Magic does things in the Warhammer world all the time. Spirits, nature spirits, are influenced by it, meaning that what might be a passive spirit at normal times, when the magics go wild and Dar becomes more common, they often move towards their more wilder aspects. And a quick way of interpreting that, is imagine the Wood Elf spirits that we all know quite well, our Spites, our Dryads, and similar. Dryads often are described as having two primary forms. Their Dryad form, where they look like winsome elven ladies who are probably a bit green, mincing around the forest, maybe having a party, dancing or whatever. Their war form, literal demonic trees that tear you to shreds with their whip-like spiked limbs. They're crazy, man. Spirits go bad, often very bad, on Geheimnisnacht. But it's not just spirits. Everywhere where Dar gathers, the local magic and how it gathers is influenced. And a single example to run off of what Ryan was saying is, imagine yourself a graveyard. Graveyard gathers great wells of Shyish. That's the winds of death. Now, in the Empire, graveyards are called gardens of Mor, because Mor is the god of death. They're not called graveyards at all. You ever see the word graveyard? It's associated with something in the Warhammer world. It's generally because the writer doesn't know they're called gardens of Mor. This is a thing, believe it or not, but gardens of Mor. And when they get filled with Dar, the Dar wraps around the skeletons and often causes them to rise, recently dead, with so much bereavement and sorrow attached to it, attract a lot of Shyish, the wind of death, and then that wind of death is corrupted by the Dar, which causes things to happen that shouldn't. And the things that happen are generally attached to the other winds, because Dar's all the winds mixed up. Hysh is the light wind, the wind of enlightenment, the wind of sentience. They sometimes wake back up with sentience. The other winds effectively provide motility. They are often shambling nothings that don't make a great deal of sense. So after Geheimnisnacht, you'll find that there's often a cleanup time where if the corpses got up, they've got to be put back down again. There's all manner of horrors that could occur that night. And as everyone creeps out from their various places that they've tried to protect and ward from, things could happen. But the reason why I went off on this slightly side tangent route was to say it's a potential. It's not a certainty. If it was a certainty, there would be no empire left.
Yeah, it'd be gone.
It'd be gone. There would be demons everywhere. That's not the case. In fact, it's Definitely not the case. It's almost like it's that one place over there that gets most of it. That one place, 100, 200 miles away gets another bit of it. It tends to be small patches that get it worst. Most of the worst aspects of what Geheimnisnacht offer is the fact that bad guys are going to do their bad guy thing. It's a fell night where things go wrong. A night of ill omens and a night of bad luck. You just don't go out on this night. Do demons rise and undead do all that stuff? Yeah, sure, they might. But they're generally the stories of did you hear what happened over in that village 20 miles away? Oh, this occurred. You get there and they're like, no, that happened to that village 20 miles in that direction. What are you talking about? It didn't happen here. It tends to be a night of... storytelling also, because everyone loves to use this as an excuse for clampdowns. Nobles will use it to clamp down on their populace, on their people. It's not just a spiritual and existential horror. It's a very real political one, because people use it as an excuse to control other people. The reality of it is that the vast majority of the empire is not safe, because Morrsleep is full. But it's not in the danger that the worst priests constantly describe. Because that's a potential danger that can be the case, but it generally requires some form of activation. An artifact that's gone wrong. A waystone, that's a part of the geomatic web that funnels all the magic over to Ulthuan, that's been corrupted. A wizard who attempts to do something. It generally requires something to be activated on that night for something to go wrong. And that's when the demons come. That's when the spirits go wild. That's when it all goes hideously awful. But it generally requires a trigger, because whatever it is that the Slann are doing is broadly successful. Morrsleep can't come down. Its influence upon the world is massive, but it's not so destructive that the entire world is changed. But it is potentially destructive if someone should activate it.
Yeah, and there are so many forces in the world that see it coming and do everything in their power to prepare for it. And many of them are largely successful. Like, they make offerings to their gods and there are protections, or runes will flare up, or rituals that are cast will work, or weird little superstitions that people have turn out to actually be somewhat effective. Like, there are all sorts of forces at play, because a lot of people get caught up with, like, oh, the demons are trying to push through, so therefore they're just going to be successful. There will be things that just sort of through sheer happenstance happen to keep them locked away or keep them at bay, because nobody triggered whatever little, granted, very minor thing that they need to, like, get in through. Like, maybe that year, often,
when they get in, they just kill what's close.
Yeah. And often, because they don't have an agenda, they don't have a plan. They're just flailing, and then the night ends and they're gone. Which is thankful for most of the world, that they're not like, it's more of a directionless violence.
Yeah, totally. Poor Bob. He got killed by his own ritual again.
This is actually a great comment I wanted to bring up from Rothia. This makes me think that some wizards would abstain from magic completely on Geheimnisnacht because they saw someone implode from the magic surge.
Yes.
Yeah, so this would actually...
No.
Yeah, this would be a really fun roleplay thing. Geheimnisnacht's classic for any roleplay group. But there is a lot that you can explore about someone's character, about how they handle Geheimnisnacht. Some people will be so terrified of it that they'll be like, I'm not gonna use any magic. I'm not gonna tempt the fates. I'm not gonna mess with anything. I'm like, if they get in a fight, they're like, I will not spellcast under any circumstances unless I'm going to absolutely die if I don't, because it's not worth the risk. Whereas you might have someone that goes, no, I have to spellcast because it's the only way I can defend myself and the only way I can have preparations in place for what might occur. Like, you're going to have different personalities finding different solutions to what's coming on here, which is interesting and fun.
Yeah, totally. It's one of those ones where, imagine you're a wizard. Okay, so you are now Bob the Wizard. No, Bob's Chaos Cultist. Let's not make you Bob. Let's make you Frank the
Joe.
Wizard.
It's gonna be Joe.
I'm going to be frank about this one.
Oh, Frank? Okay, Frank. It's Bob and Frank.
Frank the Wizard. I'm going to be frank about this one. So you're Frank the Wizard, and you've got a big ritual that you need to cast, and you failed 2 times. And you think, okay, I failed. How am I going to get enough magic to do this? And you know Geheimnisnacht will bring that magic. The question is, do you do it? Because it's also fraught with danger. Do you or don't you do it? So one wizard, Frank, says yes, and he becomes Bob because it all goes wrong. And he becomes a chaos cultist, or he gets tainted, or he just dies because the magic goes out of control. But on another day, Frank might succeed and do something like the great enchantments that are on the walls of Aldorf, which have held off all manner of horrors. But that requires a special, enormous amount of magic. Geheimnisnacht brings it, but it also brings danger and possibly despair.
Yeah, it's that temptation. I mean, think about like if you're a life wizard and there's a community that like someone's brought you a kid that's like super sick, like horribly ill child, and you know there's a spell or a ritual you could cast to cast out the sickness and make them healthy again, but it requires a lot of magic. And on Geheimnisnacht, you could very likely, as long as you don't goof, you could save this kid's life by performing a ritual and bring a lot of joy to a community. But if you fuck up even the tiniest little thing, or there are forces that are aware of what you're doing and mess with it a little bit, or you just get unlucky, something really bad could happen. Like really bad.
And it could be anything from demons to that child dying and coming back as something worse, to you becoming corrupted, to you seeing something you should never see and being awakened to possibly even the ruinous powers themselves, as you are driven into their laps, I suppose. Depending on the ruinous power, that could be a good or a bad thing. And it's just awful. But I think it is worth making quite clear. Normally, it requires a conscious decision from someone. Yep. Or an artifact that's broken, or something in the world to cause Geheimnisnacht to be worse in that locale. It's bad, and if you use magic, you're basically risking shit. But if you don't do magic, and you're just a normal peasant living in your little peasant hovel somewhere, you just get out of Geheimnisnacht's light, because Morsleep is shining down with all of its quite corrupting light. If you're out of that and just in your house, you're like almost like 99% chance going to be safe. But it's also the night where the beastmen are going to be going out. But most of those beastmen are not necessarily going to be roving around trying to kill everyone, because often they're conducting their own rituals at their herdstones. So they're gathering together. So it's a night where a lot of people think, well, surely there's going to be armies around doing shit at night. No, they're all doing their own rituals. They're all doing their own special stuff. And sometimes that causes things to happen. So long story short, it's an enormously dangerous night. But if you do the careful things, you're almost certainly fine.
Yep. All right, let's get some more super chats, and then we're going to dive into talking about specific examples around the world, which will be very fun. Gideon, so excluding when it's full, is it possible that Morsleep looks different across different parts of the Warhammer world on the same night? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
it even sometimes and often when it's full. I think the better part to your opening clause would be better, excluding Geheimnisnacht and Hexensnacht. Is it possible it looks different across the world? Yes. And even on those nights, it's possible that in one part of the world, it's far bigger than it is in another part of the world. Some of the most famous pieces of Warhammer art use Morsleep behind it. For example, the Warhammer Odyssey game, which was a mobile game that was set in Marienburg, that was released a few years back, like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. It had Marienburg as a silhouette almost with a massive full Morsleep behind it because it looked awesome. It's very possible that on that same night, you happened to be in, say, Ubersreich, and you were playing Vermintide and looked up, it would just be a full Morsleep up in the sky. Nowhere near as huge. It often waxes huge and gets big when particularly dire events are happening in the locale. So say, for example, someone was conducting a really dark ritual of true awfulness on Geheimnisnacht. It's possible that Morsleep will rise enormous in that area, which is a big warning sign for a significant number of local folks that something terrible is about to occur and they should maybe try and do something. But because it's Geheimnisnacht, they're going to be in their houses, not looking at that moon, and probably not even knowing what's going on out there. So yes to all of that. But I would say that the Hexensnacht and Geheimnisnacht opening clause is a slightly better fit.
No. Whoa.
Name.
Wado. There we go. We'll go with Wado. Apologies for that, especially because YouTube did the stupid thing now where people can't have the names they want to have and they get like these random weird ones. Super chat just for how awesome the Morsel episode was. Still my favorite Lorebeard. Super stoked for this one. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Gideon, I have an alternative rationalization. The reason Hexensnacht isn't used for the multiple ones is because it's worse. So they reserve that term for the big version of Geheimnisnacht.
That's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, I will say I'm at least glad that Hexensnacht got brought back up in 8th edition for the Hex Wraiths. It got like a feature of that. And granted, it sort of led to Hexensnacht is kind of treated in 8th edition almost more of like, oh, this is the night when the undead are really, really active. And then Geheimnisnacht is kind of more chaos-y stuff. Even though they're witches. Yeah, even though
it's always been that to a degree, though.
Yeah, true.
The flavor has always been watch for undead on Hexensnacht and watch for the ruinous powers and witches on the Night of Mystery. So that's which is funny because Hexensnacht is just Witches' Night.
Yeah,
witches on Geheimnisnacht.
Yep. Vigarian, are there any boogeyman type figures that are directly associated with Geheimnisnacht? Yes, his name is Moonclaw. Coming out or being most prominent on this day causing havoc. So there are, in various cultures, there would be a cultural boogeyman that is blamed for what is going on in Geheimnisnacht and Hexensnacht. There just would. And sometimes it would the thing that would be fun is there would be different truths behind it. Sometimes it would be a protective entity that people see on that night that's stalking around that's actually protecting them. Now, it might do so in a really horrific, nasty fashion. Like maybe there's a creature that looks like a horrible tree made of flesh and skulls that goes around, and if you're doing something that might cause demons to appear because like you're a wizard tampering with magic or you're a person that has some unknown thing, it bursts into your house and kills you, and everyone's like, oh my god, that's horrible, but it's actually protecting that area and that community from like further corruption. Or it could be that it is like a spirit or undead or demon that is bound to that area, or that's just its native area, and it just becomes active on that time because there's enough magic that it wakes up and it walks around and does things that it's really bad, but the rest of the year it's asleep or it's just not really doing anything. Or maybe it's normally a protective guardian. So like the river Bogan, for instance. So Boganauer, the god of the river, maybe most of the year he's usually depicted as pretty chill. But maybe on Geheimnisnacht, he goes a little wild, and it's more likely for like weird waves to happen and things to happen on the river that causes ships to capsize and people drown and other horrible shit happens. Like things get weird, so there's going to be stories to explain why they're weird. Because remember, the people of the Warhammer world, they're not dumb, but a lot of them are also not educated. So they rely on superstitions to explain why things happen the way they do.
Heck, we have the same in the real world. I literally spoke to somebody yesterday who was suggesting that the reason that she caught a cold was because she'd not a cold, pardon me. The reason that one of her friends had got very ill was because they'd had a vaccine that day. No coincidence. But we are always seeking patterns as humans. It's what we do. We look for patterns. So there are going to be all kinds of patterns that people will seek out and rationalize. Some of them will do it badly, and they will end up falling into the thrall of darker spirits because of it, because they think that those spirits are perhaps protecting them from Morsleep, as Ryan was suggesting. Again, I think it is definitely worth reiterating that every single society will have its own rules and its own laws, and all of them might be wrong. Take, for example, the big one that we all assume is correct. The lizardmen are holding back Morsleep. That's loosely what they do, right? But what if what they've been handed down through their plaques and the great spells that they're casting doesn't do that? What if actually what they're doing is something different? That's often the case with the Lizardmen. The Lizardmen have got zero idea what they're actually doing. The Slan, bless their souls, are desperately trying to figure out what the fuck it all means with a really incomplete plan. Really incomplete. And many of them are just reiterating what they believe the plaques tell them to do. And the Lizardmen as a whole are worse, much worse, with a whole bunch of absentee parental figures, the Slan, not talking to them or telling them what they should be doing half the time. So they just wander off and make up their own beliefs and their own concerns. So even the most core story of the Lizardmen are holding back this, but are they? And that, I think, is something that you should generally take for almost all of these stories. They will come up with all kinds of superstitions for what's actually happening, all manner of boogeymen that only appear in Geheimnisnacht. And to discuss one is to discuss 50, to discuss 100, because every part of the Empire is going to have its own stories, and every part of the Warhammer world as a whole is going to have its own stories. For example, when for LAWhammer we were building our version of Nippon, we built very strong stories for what our version of Nippon believed was happening with Warsleep, for example. And I think that is something that if you decide that you're running yourself a game or you want to tell yourself a story, go wild, because the Warhammer world's a really big space. There's lots of leeway to go wherever you want with it.
Yeah, and I'll give two very easy specific examples, just in case you're looking for some specifics. Obviously not Geheimnisnacht, but its next closest relative. We have the Hex Wraiths, and the Hex Wraiths are literally spirits that were known for appearing on Hexenstock. And it's the only night of the year they would appear, and they come from the underworlds, and they would go after like traitors and murderers and people who had accomplished these terrible things. Even though they're very spooky looking, they were doing a debatably good thing.
Yeah.
Even though they're horrible, cackling, flaming spirits on skeletal horses. And another example is, keep in mind that when the winds of magic rise to a tempest, which always happens on Geheimnisnacht, that's going to wake up big things. So like ancient dragons, dragon ogres, all of these creatures that they slumber the vast majority of the time, it is far more likely they will wake up and be hungry and will go looking for food. And, you know, maybe they'll just like slaughter a farmer's cattle and eat the cattle and piss off, but they might go after people. So like there's all sorts of things there that can happen as well.
Agreed.
Darius, worst conversations to eavesdrop on: a cult after killing on Geheimnisnacht, Dark Elves after a raid, or Joker, Scarecrow, the Mad Hatter, Pig, and Victor Zsasz together. Well, the last one would probably make for a pretty sick Batman episode, so like that would at least be like somewhat entertaining to listen to, because a lot of those guys will hate each other. Honestly, probably, in my opinion, it'd probably be the Dark Elves, because they're the most likely to realize I'm there, and that's not going to end well for me.
Yeah. But let's be honest, you don't really want to be you don't want any of them to realize you're there, really, do you?
No. But I feel like the other two I'd have a reasonable chance of staying hidden.
Too.
Yeah. But Andy, when will Lorebeards buy game? When Lorebeards buys Games Workshop?
My sound's gone.
First. Your what is gone?
My sound has completely gone.
Oh.
Huh. Okay, no, it's come back.
Okay,
maybe it was just you that disappeared for a second. Maybe it wasn't my sound. Who knows? Whatever. We're back again. Hi.
Anyway, so Andy, what will you do when, not if, but when Lorebeards buys Games Workshop?
Make a lore Bible.
Yeah.
And I just make a lore Bible. I've done lore Bibles for multiple settings in my career. But I would want a lore Bible. And I would want a solid foundation, not to constrain writers, but to inspire them. Writers work often best when they have some, at least, constraints, because that's where you have to be more imaginative. How do I tell the story I want to tell within this particular set of constraints? And some writers have gone so wild with the setting that their books have ended up having to just be ditched or ignored. Now, I'm not saying that we go down a route like, say, Star Wars, where everything is canon, that came from a certain date, because before that, Legends, no, didn't happen, no. But afterwards, everything that we've now produced is canon, because that could be detrimental towards what's required for the battle game, for the various games. But I would very much want a solid foundation point that everyone can constantly refer back to, because it just makes everything feel better and more consistent.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we've got Darius. Let's see you back.
I just want to say, but isn't all of Warhammer Fantasy Book canon? No, absolutely not. Expressly not. There's no such thing as Warhammer canon.
TW is like Black Library canon? Nah.
No.
Also, just want to say thanks. We love y'all too.
Oh,
appreciate
thanks.
it. Nice
to meet you.
Darius, glad to see you back. I recently adopted a barn cat I rescued.
Oh, lovely.
I was thinking of giving him a Warhammer name. Any suggestions? He likes to headbutt me. Okay, so
so nutting.
No, stop it. No,
nutting is very much the province of orcs.
I would, Grimgor would be good, or you have Grimgor's right hand. Oh my God, what's his name? The guy that likes to headbutt everybody.
You shouldn't have said that. Now I've forgotten.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that's really annoying.
He has. God damn it! Someone in chat will remember. It's on the tip of my tongue.
We'll come back to after.
Wargrunt face beater. Face beater. Yeah. Yeah. So face beater is such a.
Yeah, it totally. It's no worse than wearing someone's face.
Yeah, Boargut is. I would. Grimgor probably sounds better for a cat name than Boargut. I'm not gonna lie, but you do you.
So I've done this on my side. I've got 3 cats, and all 3 of my cats have Warhammer references, and that's because of our first cat, because we bought ourselves a cat that already had a name. His name was Shadow, but his name on his pedigree was Vladimir Difrig something else. Vladimir Difrig, I think was
That's
it.
Such a esteemed name for a cat.
Vlad, you say? So that was Vlad von Katstein. When we got our next cat, she was called Isabella for obvious reasons, for Isabella von Katstein. And our most recent cat is Manfred von Katstein. And he is now fucking huge. He's like twice the other cats.
Yeah, I do like Boarcat face beater. That is quite nice.
Boarcat face beater is quite funny. I like that one. Nice one.
Gideon, what impact do you think Morslib has on the Great Maw / Maelstrom? Also, with the floating mountains of Cathay have float quakes on Geheimnisnacht. That's super fucking cool. Yes, they absolutely should.
Yeah. Will it have an effect? Yes, and it will vary according to the year and according to the season. But I do think that the Great Maw will become much more agitated, and almost certainly would drag a lot more ogres to it on the rise up to Morslib's rising. It seems to make sense, particularly given where the Maw came from, and the churn on the other side of the Maelstrom would be horrendous on that night.
Yeah, the oceans are going to be so much more active. Like, the oceans are full of magic. So all sorts of horrible shit's going on. No one in their right fucking mind would be sailing on Geheimnisnacht most of the time. Unless they're really desperate. At that
point. Yeah, because you're out at sea. It makes for a good adventure. I think this is probably a good point to bring up. An obvious thing that most people don't think of, and that's that the Warhammer tides are not like real world tides. Real world tides are predictable. Real world tides have got one moon based upon them. So here on Earth, we've got the moon. We've got Luna up there doing its thing, effectively pulling on our tides, with the sun going a weaker version of that. So you can get really high tides and low tides, neap tides, for example, where it's almost a double pulling. So you can get the really high or very low tides when both the sun and the moon are pulling in the same direction. In the Warhammer world, we have 3 forces, arguably even more, but we're just going to stick with the core gravitational ones, and that's the moon, and the sun. And Manslib is the core one that brings what one would immediately go with the predictable tide. But once you add Morslib, when it's coming in close, it affects the tides. So we have far higher tides when Morsleb is full, sometimes very high tides in unexpected places, meaning that if you're a sailor, the old, oh, we'll wait for the tide to change adage kind of doesn't work. Now, does any Warhammer writer that's thinking about high sea adventures ever remember this? No! They completely forget it because they assume there's only one moon, because half the writers don't even realize Morsleb exists, because often writers are brought in who are not Warhammer fans. The editors, however, are the ones who are supposed to go, wait a minute, we need to add some Warhammer detail here. This thing you've got the sailors saying, oh, we'll wait for the change of the tide. No, you can't do that because Morsleb could be pulling the tides in weird ways. Okay, you just have to, it's a different situation. Try to portray that with what they're saying. Sailors have a very different job in the Warhammer world to the job that you get inside the real world. And it's still exceedingly dangerous. Sailing has always been a dangerous job. I come from a port town right in the very north of Scotland, and the fishermen, the stories they could tell you about what they had seen and the people who never came back. And that's in a modern era. Think what it's like back in a place where you have all of the real world horror of high seas, and then add unstable tides, the potential of Geheimnisnacht happening any night at all, if you happen to be out there whaling or trying to do a trade route from one part of the old world to, say, for example, Ulthuan or around to Cathay or where it is you happen to be going to. Every single night is a potential horror story. As sirens and awfulness is rising out of the water, the tides are churning, the waves are being pulled in directions they never should be. It's a different world, and sailing in the Warhammer world is difficult. And Geheimnisnacht is the perfect example of one of the reasons why the Warhammer world is so very different to the real world. And in some respects, the technology that they have on vessels and boats should probably be different in the Warhammer world to the ones that we have. They generally are just copy-paste from the real world with extra skulls and shields added. Bum, bum, bum. There you go. Yeah. That's some classical writing on the side. That'll do for a Warhammer ship. Done. Where in reality, you probably find that there are more of them that have used ways to, for example, deal with extremes of waves. The High Elven ships, I think, are some of the better designs, the older ones, with their catamarans and their multiple hulls, allowing them to negotiate waters and possibly even rise up above the water as and where they require to skim across the top of it. That makes sense. Some of the other ships just don't in practice, meaning that you have to then justify it. Why are they like that? Fortunately, we have a story for why. They're almost all coast huggers. Very few of the old world ships, or indeed any of the ships in the Warhammer world, actually go to the high seas very often, because the elves kill most people that do. If they find you out there, they just sink you. And perhaps there's a deeper story there as well. It's not just that it's dangerous, it's that you're going to die on a bad night and then come back. In some respects, they're keeping the oceans clean. And the Dark Elves are as likely to kill the folks out there as the High Elves. It's not High Elves do this. It's any elf on the high seas tends to kill anything they encounter unless they have a treaty. And that treaty is probably also balanced out with, and your ships have to be appropriate for getting out into the oceans.
Yeah, there's a lot of forces at bay out there. And that's not even dealing with like your vampire pirates and your regular pirates and all sorts of other stuff. Because it helps to have good, that's why most like reasonable ships have like a priest of some kind on them or a wizard and people to help out with that. But
to also predict if Mansley's going to go wrong. Astronomers from the Celestial College are very common on ships as well, purely because they're used for both navigation and also prediction for what's coming. Because if they sense that Morsleb is going to be full in 2 days, for example, they'll try to get to a port and hold there in the port until the Morsleb is past its full stage, and then they can go back out again.
Yeah. As for your Great Moth thing as well, we do have a note about the ogres on Geheimnisnacht, which is basically that they hold giant sacrificial rituals. So they get these big cauldrons and they fill them with meat. They do these big rituals to appease the maw, to protect them from what's going to go bump in the night.
That's probably getting agitated on that night. Totally makes sense. And they're not the only ones. The Skaven similarly view Morsleb almost as a symbol of the horned rat. And it's quite common for them to try and effectively coax down the warp stone that is on Morsleep. The Horned Rat, pretty much, as far as the Horned Rat's concerned, owns the place. It's his place, and it should be his Skaven that have it, no one else. The Horned Rat's got a unique way of viewing things, but a full rising of Morsleep is a night when the Skaven are also active, which means that no city is potentially safe on that night if there's something that they wish to do. Every species in the Warhammer world has something attached to Geheimnisnacht.
Yep. I just want to grab this real quick. Quick question. Is there a Christmas equivalent in fantasy like Sanguinel and the Christmas in 40K? No.
No.
Fantasy does not have a Christmas.
Nope, it doesn't. And it causes problems because almost every year, games that have events that are set in the Warhammer world want to do a Christmas event. And they can't. They can do an equivalent for, say, Halloween. They typically go with Geheimnisnacht. It's completely out by like 3 months, but it'll do. It's sort of like Halloween. It's spooky night, right?
Yeah,
Let's do that.
You can use Hexensnacht.
And that tends to be the option that they go for. When I was discussing it with Fat Shark, because they were trying to figure out, it's like, just use Hexensnacht. It'll do. It's set at the right time of year, at least. Geheimnisnacht is not set at the right time of year for Halloween. At least this is set at the right time of year. Geheimnisnacht is set in the middle of summer, which is not the best bet, but you can get off with it because Warhammer's already used Geheimnisnacht for other things. So you can just say, hey, yeah, the moon's full. Let's go. Woo! But Hexensnacht works really well.
Yeah, so what Vermintide has actually settled on now, which works really, really well, is they do a Festival of Ulrich for Christmas. So they do they do the Advent calendar, but it's themed around Ulrich.
We did. I had a list of things I sent over to Morton, and one of them was the Monstil.
The Monstil Festival and the Gifts of the Wolffather are what they do now. So that's the closest equivalent would be. It's an Ulrican or Winter God festival, which works.
Yep.
That works great.
Totally.
Okay. Oh my gosh, we're super fine on these, so we're gonna start moving here. Sorry if y'all have already covered this, but could you talk on Geheimnisnacht? I've had a lot of fun before as GM. The players discover the aftermath of the weird ass shit that happened the night before.
Wrong.
So it would be the day before.
It's the day before. So this is really common because the wiki often gets it wrong. Other bits get wrong. Geheimnisnacht is really clear. Geheimnisnacht is the day, and on that, it's almost Geheimnisnacht. It's almost Geheimnisnacht Eve, and on the eve of Geheimnisnacht, on the night of Geheimnisnacht, I can't get my words out. The moon is full. So Geheimnisnacht is an entire festival, for example. Well, Hexensnacht has got more detail on it. Is an entire festival preparing for the moon being full that night, and they do all manner of parties as they hide away from it. And Geheimnisnacht is somewhat similar. They've all got their own traditions on the day because they're all preparing for what's going to happen. The post part of it is Nachgeheim, after Geheim. Nachgeheim, which is the month right after Geheimnisnacht, is where all of the mop-up happens.
Yeah, which we'll talk about in a little. Well, actually, I'll just talk about it now for just a brief moment. The aftermath is actually there's some kind of funny notes about it in various books. Obviously, a lot of it is dealing with like potential damage from any attacks, whether it's demons or beastmen or greenskins or whatever it might have been. But there's also notes about a lot of people having to clean up things that got weird. So like you might go out and see that like the tree that grows on your property is all fucked up looking now. Like it might not be made out of wood anymore. It might be made out of flesh, or maybe it's just like all gnarled and twisted in a way that looks like grasping hands or whatever. And the general rule of thumb is if you come out of your house and you see something that has changed, whatever that is needs to be chopped up, burned, and gotten rid of. If some crops look really weird, burn them. If like your food stores are all fucked up, burn it. If that tree looks weird, chop it down. Like there's a lot of cleanup of looking for things that have changed, because that sudden change is an indication of corruption that if you don't take care of it, it can have long-term effects. Which is why people do not fuck around with that stuff.
I've got two small comments to bring up as well. Geheimnisnacht, thanks very much for bringing that one up, Felix, for when you get round to this comment, when you arrive at this point. Hi, Felix. I'm glad to say Geheimnisnacht. Correct. The reason I do the well is because it's a Scottish sound. We use it in Scotland all the time. We have words like loch and och, and we've got all manner of words. So yeah, Geheimnisnacht for me is not a particularly difficult word to say with my dialect. And there was another one I was going to say, so they have a month called Night Secret. No, it's not Nacht Geheim, it's Nach Geheim. So it's after Geheim. That's what it means.
Yeah, no T.
Yeah, there's no T in there. So it's not Nacht Geheim, it's Nach Geheim. After Geheim.
Gideon. So basically, on Geheimnisnacht, the reactor goes to 300% production. That's dangerous, but for things to happen, you mostly need to plug something in. But if it is something with a continuous supply, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that is a decent way of thinking of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Petrus, off topic. I hate the very idea of chaos dwarfs. Okay. I like how you said chaos dwarfs, but then you said dwarves on the next the next word. Dwarves are extremely resistant to chaos. Why chaos dwarfs but no chaos elves? Also, dwarfs worship a bullshit weakling chaos god. Doesn't make sense. Please convince me otherwise. So I will say we have a stream on. Just go to your search and type in Lorebeards Zarnagrund. And we go hard into detail about why are there chaos dwarves, why do they even exist, and all that stuff. I promise you will walk away from that going, I understand now. You might not agree, but you'll understand.
We also offer a theory about that bullshit god. That theory has proven to be correct.
Yes,
So when you watch that stream and you hear us going, this is how we would fix it, Games Workshop followed suit, and they have done so.
Yeah, so...
And there are Chaos Elves.
Yeah, they do exist.
They do exist.
In fact, you can actually pick up, like, and granted, GW might be like, no, they don't, but they do. Like, go pick up the Gilead novels. The Gilead novels feature Chaos Elves. And
if you check the Storm of Chaos army list, you've got the Anointed of Slanesh, which are Chaos Elves.
Yeah, and they're
again,
in Total War Chaos Elves.
Then that's in Fantasy Battle too. So, and these Chaos Elves are not mutants because elves don't mutate, but they're fucking weird. And they are horrible.
Yeah, so it's not that because dwarfs are resistant to mutation. I don't know if I necessarily say dwarfs are resistant to chaos itself. That's technically a different discussion that leans more on like the halfling and ogre side of things. Go check out that stream. Hopefully it'll answer all your questions. Because that's otherwise this would be like a huge tangent. Sean shows, what happens to wizards' towers on these nights? Do wizards start to get mutations from their color of magic? Those aren't mutations.
They're not mutations. They're just arcane marks.
Yeah, those are completely different.
If you're using magic on Geheimnisnacht, you are going to be potentially in trouble. And that doesn't mean you will be. You might control it. You might successfully allow the wind to pass through you or through an ingredient or whatever you're doing to stop it from affecting you. But the odds are much higher that something will go wrong. They're much higher that you will corrupt, and they're much higher that you'll gain arcane marks or mutations.
And wizard towers, keep in mind, wizard towers are designed to protect the wizards as well as augment them. So they're often designed with defenses in mind. They don't just they're not like, oh my God, this place is going to explode. They have the proper precautions in place if they're built correctly, which is a bit of an if anyone's ever dealt with having anything constructed by anyone. Stephen Lucas, Fear and Hunger 2 Moon Festival of Rar, just a normal yearly Geheimnisnacht celebration. Well, it's actually interesting. So Andy kind of briefly mentioned it, but it's worth diving in for a quick second. There are genuine parties on nights like Geheimnisnacht and Hexensnacht because they're meant to distract you while the spooky stuff happens outside. Like a lot of nobles will host grand balls and festivals that are inside generally, there are these huge masquerades and great parties, like the Electric Countess of Nuln holds a big party, because they're meant to serve as delightful distractions so that the night will pass quickly without incident. which
absolutely.
ironically kind of puts them at risk of different kinds of dangers. If the Mask of Slanesh, who's just now coming to Total War, and we'll be doing a video on her soon, the way she manifests is parties that on nights like Geheimnisnacht get a little too wild.
Yep.
Yeah, so you gotta be careful. Agar, do you think that Geheimnisnacht is the night a lot of deals are made with demons, very much in the sense of meeting a demon at the crossroads type of idea? Was thinking of Gideon in my game taking influence from this sort of concept.
Yes.
Yep,
sure. It's definitely a night that it's going to be easier to contact them, where the veil between the realm of chaos and the material realms, so the mortal realms and the realm of the gods, if you will, is much thinner. So can you pierce through? Yes. Can the demon possibly pierce through and communicate from the other side? Yes. If you've got a demon like Gideon, which is manifest in the material realm, equally, yes to all of that.
Yeah, and this is actually something you could play around with, of like, if you have a character who was like in a bad situation in life on a Geheimnisnacht and they were praying to whatever to deliver them or save them or help them, something may have answered that maybe pretends to be that god or pretends to be a divine servant of that god, but is much more sinister in aspect. And
Perfect.
Maybe they only hear from it on like nights where Morsalib is full and stuff like that. And to them, they're like, no, this thing has always given me good advice. It's always helped me. It's always been there for me. But there's something, like those deals with the devil. It seems good until it suddenly isn't, or the debt comes calling, stuff like that. So you play around with it. Gideon, are dragons and dragon ogres more likely to wake up in Geheimnisnacht and Hexisnacht? Yes.
Yeah, as Sotek. I did it. I did it.
You're doing so good.
That's my first fumble. I'm going to fumble it again. Trust me. As Ryan said earlier, yes, this is something that is more likely. But for many of the older and larger ones, we're talking more likely in like low percentages. Say, for example, there's a 0.5% chance a dragon wakes up. It becomes a 0.7. It's not much bigger. It might double to a 1%, but it's still only a 1% chance. It's not big numbers
the
here.
Younger ones
but it does affect.
Yeah, the younger ones, like regular dragon ogres, are almost guaranteed to be waking up. But like totally. A Shaggoth
climbing up those peaks, looking for the lightning and the storm.
Yeah. TS, love you both. First time Competix says watching live. No real question, but you guys helped me with my first ever wolf rep yesterday. Both of you guys are epic. Oh, that's so lovely. That's
marvelous.
Awesome.
I'm glad to hear that, TS.
Yeah,
good luck with your Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game.
Yeah, feel free to pop into our Discord and like leave some details about how your first session went. I love reading about like how y'all's sessions are going and like the characters you're playing with, or if you're a GM, how the adventure's going. And we have our new Discord, which you can find links down to below. And Hawk will also hopefully here in a second post some fresh links. But would highly recommend checking out and joining our community. The Zero Daimu, responding to education in world. Elves have very few generations since the beginning of time. Does the average elf know more true facts or not as much as expected? It would.
So this is complicated because we often view elves through the same light as humans, and forget that elves are a far more political, far more controlling species as a base level. So the answer is, do the older elves know more true facts that they've witnessed? Yes. But do all elves know these true facts? Absolutely not. The lies that they spread about their own history are deep and often, for good reason, spread wide. Nobody wants the dark elves to look sympathetic because they're horror shows. Nobody on the dark elf sides want the high elves to look strong because they're the enemy. So they constantly respin and retell their tales of the past, turning someone like, say, Malarian stroke Malekith into a literal boogeyman rather than the person, the elf that made those early decisions and how they came to pass. Marathi and how she became what she became to the High Elves is a story they have no real interest in telling. She is a bad guy. And that very much manifests as well when you take a look at the army lists and you see how the different tales are spun from each side. There's some really nice Dark Elf side ones where they view the High Elves and they tell the story of the High Elves, and it's a very different tale. From their perspective, the High Elves really screwed the pooch. Where if you take the High Elf side, the Dark Elves screwed the pooch, and Malekith was an idiot. And it really does depend on your angles. But loosely speaking, the old ones, yes, but there's not that many really old ones. And those really old ones tend to be so steeped in politics and their own heart-wrenching stories that the stories they tell are often more bullshit than anything you'd ever find in an Imperial history book.
Yeah, remember that the elves, because they're deeply, deeply, deeply emotional creatures, they have very strong biases that are like, obviously humans have a lot of biases too, but elves are like, there's a lot of emotion that goes into the ways they interpret things, and that's going to come out in how they understand and explain things to their, following generations, who will take those very dramatic truths and then add their own context onto them, and it gets very messy.
Yeah, and the retelling of a tale for the 9,000th time, it's going to change.
Yep. Necroplayer. Now I want a story/RPG scenario of a seaside town at Geheimnisnacht during a supermoon, highest tide, and magic makes the perfect ocean eldritch horror. Yes, it does.
I agreed completely. I've run a scenario that was effectively this, and I've done the flooding of Marienburg. My version of Marienburg had far higher docks because of the potential issues that the super tides almost certainly would bring. And I ran a scenario which was basically what happens when it comes, and the floodings and the awfulness and the terror that was going on behind it. But equally, I ran a Nordland scenario which was very similar, but was the opposite. It was the tide was really low, and the adventure took place about 3 miles into what was the normal sea. And they trekked down to an old abandoned temple that used to be on a coastline from a previous era.
That's cool. Yeah.
It had been revealed because the tide had pulled back over 4.5 miles, and they had a time limit. How long was Morsley Pool on the other side of the world, alongside Mansley, basically, pulling the water out to either side? And they didn't know, and neither did I, because I randomized it every single round. There was a chance that the tide would start coming in, and it was super fun. Definitely worth doing. It's something that I think the roleplay game for the Warhammer world has as an almost unique and interesting adventure type that isn't present on most game worlds, because most game worlds present a world that's just the Earth.
Yeah, I actually want to grab this. This is a great comment of how awful the tide must be of Barakvar at the end of that long strait. Yes, but also think about how dwarven engineering and ingenuity would try to combat it. The dwarves using like great machines and engines to like funnel water in or keep water in place, and using dams and other things to try and combat the natural effects of the world. Because like if you have like an extreme tide system, imagine like if the dwarves built like a system of what are they called, like levees, where like where you have like the
levees,
where you have to like go through these various gates that hold the water in place so that it can't get too low, which could obviously be really bad for their ironclads. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll get into talking about some specific examples around the world, which are just kind of fun. We have Vagarian. How does Geheimnisnacht affect the gnomes? Well, let's turn to our official resurrector of the gnome expert here, Andy Law.
The gnomes live in their burrows. The gnomes are, as a species, very deeply into dark magic. This might surprise some who don't know much about the gnomes, but they use dark magic a lot. So for them, it is a central day for both some of their greatest magical workings, in particular the illusions that they often use to mask their burrows and entrances into them, and similar. But it's also one of deep religious significance. For example, Mabon, one of their gods of sorcery, is entirely associated with Geheimnisnacht and Hexensnacht. So loosely speaking, it's a part of their religious and social calendar. And because so many of them are wizards who can use it, they use that night to help fuel the greatest workings that they have. Is it dangerous? Yes, but gnomes are of all the dark magic users, they're one of the safer species in using it. They're aware of its dangers, and they work very hard to ensure that its significant and long-lasting taint does not corrupt them too far.
Yeah. So, with that, jumping into a couple of various little storylines from around the Warhammer world of like specific ideas of like what actually happened in a few places. That's really fun. So in the last time Geheimnisnacht actually got like a major feature from the core studio for Warhammer Fantasy was in the 8th edition Demons book, where it got like just a nice little blurb where they kind of dedicated like half a page to talking about it and gave like a lot of
controversial blurb.
Yeah, well, yes. One of the things that's actually kind of funny is that this book has what I would just say is an inaccuracy, which is so Andy talked about it earlier, but I will talk about it a little bit of that coming from someone that just read the books and wasn't working on the setting behind the scenes. Geheimnisnacht was a very confusing term because different writers treated it very, very differently. Of that, according to some writers, it's Geheimnisnacht is when both Manslib and Morslib are full at the same time. That's what, yeah. So that's the big deal. Great, cool, awesome. And then you'll get like the 8th edition Demons book, which just says, nope, it's just when Morslib is full, which only happens twice a year. It's like, no, that's not right. You're missing a part because there's no mention of Manslib. Fun fact. So that's just an error. But you'll also have there have also been, I remember there's an author who also mistakenly had it as Geheimnisnacht is when Manslib is eclipsed by Morslib, which is something that can happen and is really, really fucking bad when it does. So like Manslib or Morslib blocks out Manslib and the light of it. So there are different interpretations. You also have something like Andy mentioned earlier of that because the stipulation is, it's when Morslib and Manslib are full. There are some authors who also have misunderstood it as, it's just when Morslib is full. They'll say, Geheimnisnacht can happen at any time.
Anytime.
So no one knows when it's coming, and it's a complete mystery, and it can show up at any point. So you have to be ready at all times, which is spooky, but also kind of insane. And then you, of course, have the roleplay game, and what makes much more sense, which is that, no, it's a specific day of the year where like a lot of various things line up astrologically or astronomically, both for all of these conjunctions to fall in place. So that is something worth keeping in mind when you're kind of exploring the lore, is that there's a lot of different interpretations. But anyway, with that out of the way, so for the Demons book, some actually like really, really fun examples that it gives. So we have a specific year where they tell us what happened on Geheimnisnacht that year. So we have the Long Night of Chaos, which was in 1851. And this is what happened that year. So this year, so imagine this is a weather forecast. This year on Geheimnisnacht, all of the rivers flowing into the Empire from the Grey Mountains, instead of running with water, instead ran thick with blood. Great, awesome, wonderful. Also, great flux of Chaos Furies came down from the mountains and swept over the various western provinces of the Empire. So Reichland, the Westerland, because this would have been pre-secession, Wisenland, Solland, all these places. Flocks of Chaos Furies descended on them and were just like plucking people out of the streets or plucking people out of their homes and attacking people, just carrying men, women, and livestock into the night that were never seen again. Marienburg, the city, just comes under siege because an entire legion of plague demons come crawling out of the ocean. Just cuz. So the ocean of Marienburg is described as like curdling, like sour milk. So like the ocean gets like thick and frothy, and all of a sudden it starts all of these horrible plague demons of Nurgle of all various different sizes and forms and shapes come crawling out of the ocean and start laying siege to Marienburg from the ocean side. Awful, great, terrible. Meanwhile, otherwhere in the forecast, there was a big battle happening where a wall was being held off by an army of the Empire, only for a forest to start shrieking and screaming as a legion of demons of Slaanesh come pouring out of it and attack both sides. Fun. Meanwhile, we have the city of Altdorf. The city of Altdorf has a terrible time because someone definitely did something very stupid, that a cultist somehow initiated a contest where Khorne and Slaanesh were trying to claim the soul of the same guy. So Slaanesh sent legions of Hellflayer chariots, and Khorne sent fleshhounds. So the streets were full of Slaanesh chariots and fleshhounds fighting one another, trying to get to this one guy to claim his soul for their god. So that was a good night not to be on the road. Meanwhile, in Talapine, I actually love this one. In the city of Talapine, the Temple of Shalya itself comes to life as a giant construct that attacks the imperial palace of the Emperor, who is annulled at this point. So the Emperor's palace comes under attack by the Temple of Shalya, which is a golem with giant stone tentacles that start attacking it as the garrison desperately tries to hold off this horror, because likely there was a ritual in the Temple of Shalya that went astray, probably due to cultist interactions. Only for when with the Fenestras and the gargoyles on the temple actively attacking people trying to hold it off. And then also, when the guard goes to confront it, the doors burst open, and instead of there being Sisters of Shalya, a legion of demons comes pouring out. Though the Empire does actually hold them off. The Imperial Palace does not fall. And then the last note is that of all of the Empire's great cities, only Middenheim is undisturbed. Middenheim, nothing bad happens. Which the Ulricans go, that's because Ulric is so mighty, and we have the Flame of Ulric, and it's what protects us. But other forces in the Empire go, no, it's because Middenheim is in league with dark powers, and clearly they were spared while the rest of us suffered because they made bargains with demons. Because Empire political things. And that was the Empire in 1851. It was a shit year for them.
That gives you a nice snapshot, though, for all the potentials that you could use if you were telling stories or making your own roleplay events for the night. Loosely, it's a potential horror show. And if you want to have all manner of craziness happening, go wild. Games Workshop have.
Yeah. Some other notes that we have about what's going on in other places of the world. So in Bretonia, the Demon's Book actually just literally quoted the older roleplay editions, which was nice because it brought it back. So in Bretonia, they don't call it Geheimnisnacht. They call it Winter's Eve, which they should call it that in French, but for which is weird because it's not winter. So I don't know why they call it that, but they do, which means this is probably someone who got Geheimnisnacht and Hexensnacht mixed up, because for Hexensnacht, that would make a lot of sense.
Yep. But even then, it's not Winter's Eve, because Winter's Eve would be, it would be a good 2 months before Hexenstag.
Yeah. So anyway, let's Bretonian peasants. They're so silly. We don't know why the Bretonians call it that, but apparently they do. So, but what happens in Bretonia mainly is that people flood out. A lot of the peasants will leave their peasant communities and they go to the local castles or the local temples of the lady or the shrines of the lady. So they will go to fortified locations where they have like big stone walls and lots of knights. Various groups of knights errant will actually ride out if they're particularly stupid and hot-headed, which many of them are. But there will be various groups of knights that will go on patrol. Grail Knights will watch over their various shrines, but most of the effort is focused on the fortified towns and cities that have actual stone walls and notable protections just in case, because like we've talked about, a lot of things go bump in the night, and the forests of Bretonia have a lot of really nasty things in them that will come out of the forests. So things like Pratons and other sorts of horrible monsters. Or go watch our tier list video that we did on the various duchies of Bretonia, where we talk about like all the creatures that are native to them, like the talking monkey boar things. Or no, it's the talking horses. And then there's also the monkey boars, and all sorts of other weird shit. This just cracks me up. You know, the 4 Harkerims or whatever the fuck they're called. Anyway, yeah. So, but the other big thing that Bretonia has to watch out for is Athel Loren. Because on Geheimnisnacht, Athel Loren gets fucking spooky. Because the spirits there, like your dryads, your treemen, and all that, they get kind of nasty during Geheimnisnacht. Because it's during summer, so it's when Athel Loren is at the height of its power. And often this is when Orion is on the wild hunt. And the wild hunt is not friendly to people around Athel Loren. So a lot of what like the Bronian peasantry and stuff are hiding from isn't necessarily even just demons. It could just be wood elves. Like guys that you would think of as good guys who are going around murdering anything and everything they come across, which will sometimes include bad guys, but oftentimes doesn't. It could just be innocent people that are just caught in the way. Because they don't care. And the spirits don't care. They're hungry and they're angry and they're venting a lot of those frustrations on anything that can get within arm's reach. You will have communities of wood elves within Athel Loren that are going to have to defend themselves against spirits that are normally friendly. Like they're going to be using their various rituals to make sure the forest doesn't kill them, because even though they're part of Athel Loren, there are aspects that don't like them. And aspects that take advantage of like the defenses lowering or the waystones flickering or getting weaker. It's a spooky fucking place to live. Like for the elves, it's dangerous. Their home becomes really dangerous on this night. Over in Ulthuan, you have very similar things. Ulthuan is a very magically saturated land. The Anuli Mountains in particular barf out some horrible shit on Geheimnisnacht. Legions of demons can come pouring down from the tops of the mountains. There are a lot of monsters that'll get disturbed by the raising winds of magic, like chimeras, manticores, all sorts of horrible shit will come screaming down from the mountains to attack people. And for the High Elves, it's busy. It's a very, very, very busy night. There's notes about like the sword masters of Hoeth in particular will go out accompanying wizards and archmages and mages that go to various places in Ulthuan to do rituals to try and protect the various waystones, things that might get damaged just by chance or because demonic entities might affect them. We also, which is, by the way, it's called Twilight's Tide for the elves. And then for the dwarfs, we have Ar Uzkul, which will be something of skulls.
I don't remember called that. That's funny.
Yeah, but for the dwarves, the big note we get is that for the dwarves, the biggest threat to them is the Underdeep. The deepest, darkest places of the holds, where the dwarfs will go down into the lowest deeps and runically seal all of the doors, and all of the doors will, every single pathway down from the darkest depths will be watched by great throngs, and in more narrow passages, it'll be watched by.
So what name did he? No, what name did he choose for?
AR apostrophe Uzkul.
Okay, so it's Skraxdeg in most of the sources.
Oh,
okay, so that's interesting. Though, so clearly, whoever wrote that part for 8th just didn't read any of the previous dwarf material.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. So we have 2 names for dwarf.
Which, that could work. I mean, they could just be different groups. Now, granted, it does specifically say that. Well, no, it just says to the dwarfs, which is vague. But anyway, so there's talks about, so you'll have Iron Breakers and Slayers. For Slayers, Geheimnisnacht's great. That's a giddy night for them. That's game time night where they hope something goes wrong, because if they do, there's a great chance they're going to find their doom, and it'll be a glorious one. But a lot of them, they will just seal tight the doors and hope nothing from the deep dark wakes up, or demons don't manifest, because a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of places in the depths of the earth, mostly due to Old One shenanigans, there are things down there that go big bump, and there are demons down there. Like, granted, very much inspired by like your Balrog, but there are like instances where dwarves have uncovered chambers where there's demons contained deep within the earth, and because of the nature of like the magic down there, they're able to like stay manifested, even though they've been trapped down there for who knows how long. So all around the world, and obviously we talked about the Lizardmen. The Lizardmen are very busy dealing with like demonic escapades. Skaven often do a lot of big rituals, many of them attempting, like Andy said, to entice Morslib. This has been successful. There have been times where the Skaven have successfully performed rituals on Geheimnisnacht, notably during the Black Plague times, where they cause Morslib to unleash a great meteor shower of warpstone comets that come slamming into the world all around it. The Skaven have successfully pulled that off at different times. We don't have a lot of notes, unfortunately, yet about Grand Cathay and what they're up to on Geheimnisnacht. Likely they're up to a lot, especially, granted, we're going to be talking about it soon on Lorebeards. But the recent short story that David Geimer wrote for Total War actually does a lot to show that especially Southern Cathay is really fucking scary. Like, really scary. And that Cathay is apparently a very magically saturated land, which me and Andy were like, it should be, and there should be lots of spirits, which David Guyver goes, there are many different spirits, and it's like, oh, great.
Thanks, David, for confirming what we said.
Yeah. So but all over the world, and like Andy said, it's not guaranteed that anything will happen, but you have to be ready, because if something does, it's gonna be big. Over in Kislev is actually particularly interesting for a few notable reasons. The hags, this is a very busy night for them, because if you've watched our numerous streams that we've talked about hags, the hags often act as the intermediaries between the spirits and the people, and they know that the spirits are going to get a little antsy. And for the hags, they often have to do things that us normal people who are not aware of all the situation would probably deem as morally awful, horrible, evil actions, but they are things to placate the spirits and keep them from harming a lot more people. Doing deals and bargains to make sure that the spirits are bound by their word or bound by pacts that will keep like the larger community safe, but the price that has to be paid might be truly terrible. Also, a really good wolf rip idea of, if your party comes across a hag doing something that looks fucking terrible from initial appearance because they don't understand why she's doing it, do they stop her because like she's about to kill some little, like a baby or something, sacrificing a baby to a hungry spirit? But by stopping her, it unleashes something way worse. Or, will they attempt to understand? Because hags also don't tend to bother explaining themselves because they ain't got time for that.
No, if you're not part of their circle, they have no interest in talking to you.
Yeah, Ice Witches, very, very busy on Geheimnisnacht, protecting various cities. One of the worst places to be in the world, Prague. Prague sucks on Geheimnisnacht.
Prague sucks.
We've talked about Prague a good bit, but that is a night where like the streets and the walls will be moving with the faces of people whose souls are trapped in the very foundations, screaming. There will be a lot of people who in dark alleyways or other places in Prague will vanish and never be seen again. And no one will ever know what happened to them. And it's very possible the city itself just ate them, which is horrible. Sylvania, there's actually some cool notes about Sylvania where like Sylvania, the peasants of Sylvania light candles for all of their relatives that have died that year in the windows. Basically, not only offering, it's a ritual of not only grief, but a way to hopefully kind of ask their relatives to protect them, to guard them from the other things that go bump in the night. And the vampire counts, very, very busy on Geheimnisnacht because they might be doing rituals. Vlad von Karstein initiated the vampire wars on a Geheimnisnacht where he performed a really big ritual with all of the magic that was there from one of the books of Nagash to resurrect almost all of the dead of Sylvania.
Summoning.
Yeah. But there are a lot of vampires that are also protecting their communities during these evenings, protecting their cattle, so to speak. fighting against demons and other horrors that are coming out of the forest. There are a lot of, like, this is kind of one of those nights where the undead could either be the big bad or they're the heroes, because they're out there actually protecting a lot. Like, LAWmians are going to be super busy. LAWmians of von Karsteins in particular, protecting their local communities where they have schemes and other things going from things that will threaten them. Blood dragons are going to be out there having the night of their life, looking for a true challenge, something to fight, a big horrible demon or a big monster or something that they can throw down with. Imagine your party, if you're, once again, tying things back to Wolford, it's always great. If you put them in a situation where they're completely overwhelmed, they're going to die on Morslib, and then a fucking vampire saves them, of all things. Just because they happen to be in its territory and it's not tolerating other chaos and undead. Not friends. Not friends at the best of times.
Cut a long story short, people are busy, yo.
Yeah, so hopefully that covered enough of the spectrum where you're like, oh,
yeah,
busy.
All right, what are folks saying?
Let's see. We got some more super chats we gotta get through here. Boop. Once again, cheers are not working yet on Twitch, but we'll grab these just super nice. Loving this new fellowship with the beard. Yes, we're very excited for the new members. There's still one that's been on some Lorebeards stuff, but you're gonna get to see her doing her own stuff with the book club pretty soon and some further streams. There's actually going to be a lot more material coming to Lorebeards than we've revealed yet. Like, there's going to be a lot of gaming streams coming to Lorebeards soon, which will be really exciting. Though those will primarily be on the Twitch side of Lorebeards as opposed to the YouTube side.
Yep.
Holy artists aren't Chaos Elves, just Dark Elves. No, God, no. Dark Elves.
No.
Yeah, Dark Elves are actually one of the biggest anti-chaos groups out there.
Yep.
Super Orlok.
Anti-chaos.
Stayed up too late. Just wanted to congratulate you guys on the relaunch. You guys are great. Well, thank you. Hope you had a fun night, whatever you were up to. Gideon, side note, I love how buff they made the mask in Total War. Buff. Yeah. Though it looks like a great combination of male and female dancers. Seriously, look at male ballerinas. Yeah, she's ripped. It's one of those times where I think the Total War design is actually better than the tabletop design, because she's so muscular. And it's like, oh yeah, she looks like she could dance and do literally anything, and could also rip me to pieces. Like, rip me to, like, the idea of her, like,
I hope the animations are good for that one.
Yeah, I hope they are too. Like, the idea of her tearing apart like a knight in full armor, I believe it. Is Mariah Carey, not Mariah Carey, Mariah Carey, a demon of Geheimnisnacht? No, she would probably be a demon of Hexensnacht, actually. Probably not a, like the banshee that wails in the coming of Hexensnacht.
All I want for Hexensnacht.
That anyone that has ever worked a minimum wage retail job dreads that song more than any other. God forbid she starts so early, it might as well be for Geheimnisnacht. Gideon, some animals use lunar cycles in various ways, like horseshoe crabs mating on full moons. Do you think some animals would use Geheimnisnacht like this? Yes.
And I think it'd be more likely to be based on the Manslieb lunar cycles as well. Yeah. But remember, Manslieb is also full on Geheimnisnacht and full on Hexensnacht too. It's got a fixed cycle of 20 days that you can chart the entire year with, to the point that it's a bit surprising that it wasn't used for more timing, because it matches perfectly with the days. It doesn't have a point so many days or whatever. It's exactly 20 days for its complete cycle.
Yeah, and I would say, feel free to explore like chaos creatures only mating when Morslib is full, but that leads to them having like erratic mating cycles, which is like super fun. Frank the Trader, is the eclipse from Berserk a good representation for what happens during Geheimnisnacht? That would be a particularly ugly Geheimnisnacht.
That would be a bad one. I mean, plus isn't the eclipse like every like 200 and something years or so?
Yeah, I would
it's
say
like a far rarer event than this.
So I would say
it's super Geheimnisnacht.
Yeah, I would say this is more accurate for, imagine a Geheimnisnacht where Morslib eclipsed Manslib. So like, it's Geheimnisnacht, but Morslib,
a chaos incursion.
Yeah, and it would be during a chaos incursion. Yeah, so
that'd be perfect. Perhaps where you crown one of the Everchosens.
Yeah, so Would that be a good representation for that? Yes, it would be that level of bad.
So yeah, nice one, Predator. Good reference.
Super luck. I mean, what are the 2 parts of the year that are the worst for peasants? Geheimnisnacht and winter. Therefore, it would be Winter's Eve. I guess it. I don't know. It just to me it just feels like
it'd be a little bit like going to a high summer party and saying this is Winter's Eve. It's not really. Summer.
I really just feel like the author just didn't realize Geheimnisnacht is in summer, which is not unusual. That's not unusual at all.
Most of them imagine Geheimnisnacht as this almost wintry, cold, autumnal sort of thing that happens in the darker months when everything is growing chill and wrong, where Geheimnisnacht has always been high summer, the contrast between the light in the festival of the day and the horror in the dark of night. It's the shorter night and arguably worse because you have less time to do all of your dark deeds, so to speak. By dark deeds.
You said the
thing. I'm a shell. Go buy the game Dark Deeds. If you don't know what that is, seriously, you should by now.
Links in the description.
Isn't it great? You have less time than you do, say, for example, in Geheimnisnacht, where you have a yawning darkness that lasts for ages. But yeah, most people tend to conflate what Geheimnisnacht is with what Geheimnisnacht is.
The Zero Daimu, does Manslib or its light have its own magic? That's a controversial question. That's a super controversial question.
That's an interesting one. I don't think it's quite one for this stream, but it is worth noting that Manslib and potentially things from Manslib most certainly have got their own silvery, cold magic stuff going on. And the Warhammer world is exceedingly poor at rationalizing anything that isn't the 8 winds of magic. So the answer to this is no, it's just the 8 winds of magic, unless you look at it and go, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. It has to be something else. Can it be something else? Yes, Kislev has got its own ice magic. There's a host of very cold, chill, magical things across the Warhammer world that are potentially directly related to Manslib, ranging from Cathay all the way over to Middenheim. I think the only accurate answer here is no, but also yes.
That's what I would say. I would put it as, think about how magical the moon is in our world, and think about how much Warhammer shamelessly imports everything it can think of from our world's mysteries and mythologies into itself. Somewhere, somehow in the Warhammer world, there is moon magic that deeply, deeply, deeply is tied to Manslib and hates and despises Morslib with every fiber of its being. It exists somewhere, but it hasn't been detailed. Would be my probable answer.
The bad moon has its Manslib reflection.
Yeah. Gideon, would the Chaos Dwarves use Geheimnisnacht to bind particularly powerful demons to their creations, or maybe use it to awaken the Kadai? Probably more the first one.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think almost certainly the additional benefits of doing their magics and their darker deeds. I've got it stuck in my head now. Their darker deeds during Geheimnisnacht are significant. They would be using the peaks of the magic that they could attain on those almost holy days. It would not surprise me if the religion actually got any depth that Geheimnisnacht would be tied probably to the great dark god that they worship, Hashut.
Yeah, I would see that probably being a very religiously significant holiday for Hashut.
I mean, or Hexensnacht perhaps being attached to it, because it is in the Empire they attach it to gods. Hexensnacht is attached to more directly to more. It's a sacred day. Hexen's tag is a sacred day for more, and the night more it's supposed to protect over you should you do the correct rituals. A particularly important day over an Ostermark, for example. So I think it's very likely the Chaos Dwarves have got significant religious festivals attached to this, and you can even potentially tie it through to some of the greenskins' fear of the bad moon that rises over there. because the Chaos Dwarves like to view themselves as superior in all ways. So having the greenskins and their fear of the bad moon balanced off with the Chaos Dwarves and their not reverence of it, use of it might be a better way of putting it.
Yes.
Seems fair.
Yeah, I would love the idea that would make sense of like maybe the first time Hashit ever reached out to the Chaos Dwarfs was on a Geheimnisnacht when they were deep in the dark pits beneath Uzkalak. And they were crying out for aid, and maybe that's the night he answered.
And that's the night that we got our answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and so all these years, all these millennia later, it's celebrated for them as a sacred holy holiday when it's Hashit's day that he answered them.
Yeah, and you've got to remember how important ancestor worship and remembering the past is for the dwarves. So I think that makes for a really strong story. Yeah.
Yeah. Dumpy Dumbo. Night goblins. Night goblins on Geheimnisnacht. Do they love it, or is it the light of Damun a turnoff? Are there night goblins / squigs in the dark woods, or is it just the mountains? Okay, so night goblins are really funny. Because most greenskins, they call the bad moon because it's bad. Like, it's something to be avoided. Yeah, a lot of greenskins will retreat underground or into their fortresses and other places, and they will hide. Night goblins are a bit of an exception. They tend to come out on the nights where the bad moon is full because they find the light of the bad moon far more comforting and kind than the evil sun. And so they, on a Geheimnisnacht, night goblins pour out and they attack a lot of places around the mountain. So like the border princes, one of the major threats of the border princes is actually less likely to be like demons and stuff. It's night goblins. Because they come.
Agreed.
They come all out of like the Gray Mountains and the Middle Mountains, the Black Mountains, they make a mess. And they go crazy. It's moon lunacy, literally. Like the night goblins,
they perform rituals. They get high on mushrooms. They go out for the bad moon.
Wigged out.
They go mental. So your fanatics going extra fanatical. So you're as likely to have yourself a horde of gibbering lunatics on your doorstep as you are to have them slaughtering themselves in an almost orgiastic melee of horror. It's going to be an unpredictable evening when you're dealing with the very high night goblins.
Yeah, the two greenskin cultures, most greenskins culture, like I said, are likely to be doing less or just defending their holdings. But night goblins and forest goblins tend to be very active because the spiders get really active during Geheimnisnacht. So the forest goblins will often usually, funny enough, the beastmen and the forest goblins will be fighting their big war on Geheimnisnacht because they'll be competing over very magically saturated places in the forest because the night goblins or the forest goblins want it for rituals to the feaster from beyond or the spider god, but the beastmen want it for their herdstones and rituals for the dark gods. So they'll be fighting. But the night goblins, for them, it's party night, but their parties involve violence because they're greenskins. It's basically a big rave that takes them out from under the mountains. But the follow-up question are there night goblins and squigs in dark woods or just the mountains? There are night goblins and squigs beneath the dark forests, like beneath the roots and all that stuff. So they will seemingly kind of come out of the forest. They're less common, but they are out there. And there are mountain ranges in the middle of forests, and night goblins will have ventured to those places. Just by following like the ancient dwarf underroads that have collapsed, or just following natural tunnels, or by following Skaven tunnels. Night goblins can kind of show up fucking anywhere. There are cities that have night goblins living underneath them in the sewers. If there is a place underground, there's probably night goblins nearby.
Yep.
And then Gideon, and we're finally caught up. That reminds me. Guess what game my dad said? It looks interesting. We'll have to try it when you're back after I requested it for Xmas. Oh, lovely. I hope you'll have fun with Dark Deeds.
Everyone should buy at least 3 copies.
It is a very fun game.
It is.
And remember, I don't get any payouts. That's my genuine opinion. I'm not a paid marketer.
Here's for that one, Ryan.
But so that is the main general focuses of Geheimnisnacht. The only thing that's we've talked a little bit. Oh, actually, there's one more thing that's worth mentioning. one of the other things to keep in mind when you're dealing with role play or just writing about the universe and thinking about the universe is the animal life, like the natural life of animals, is actually really interesting on Geheimnisnacht. Of that, for most wild animals, it is the night to hide. It is a natural disturbance that they have senses for, and they feel it, and they will hide away. It's like Geheimnisnacht is the day and the night that, like, if you were in the forest, it would be dead silent. There's no insects making noise. You know the trope of like the movie where they're in the jungle or whatever, and there's like a big footstep and everything goes dead quiet because all of nature's like, oh shit, because like the big monsters nearby. That's Geheimnisnacht. It is a horrible night of spooky silence until it suddenly isn't, right? And there's like the horrible scream of something nearby. But like, imagine like the natural animals of how they deal with like a big jabberslife like is active and bursts into a grove full of animals. All of a sudden, all the birds and everything go crazy trying to escape from it. And if you're some peasant lumberjack, you just hear these horrible sounds from out in the wilds of nature just trying to survive a night where all wholesome things are under attack. It's not just civilization, it's everything is under assault. And trying to survive and trying to stay hidden. In a lot of really unique, interesting ways. But there's also the aspect of the people that are unlucky. Of like, there are notes about like domesticated animals will often have really bad times on Geheimnisnacht, where peasants will like open up their barns to go check on their cattle, and they've turned into a fucking chaos spawn where they've all melded together into like something from The Thing. Or there's even there are stories about how like people have like a Black Phillip situation where a peasant will hear like their goat talking to them, and it's saying like things that it's saying like deep, terrible truths that they don't want to hear, and it's telling things about that it's witnessed and that it's seen, and it's like really intelligent. And then the next day, it's a completely normal goat, and there's no indication that anything happened, and maybe it was just a nightmare. Maybe that didn't actually happen. Should you kill the goat just to be safe? But you need the goat because you rely on it for like your family's livelihood. Oh no, what do I do? Like it's, or maybe like, like a lot of weird mutations happen, but it's a night of weird things, not just evil, but weird.
Yeah, I think that's the easy part to forget, because when writers are dealing with the Warhammer world, they often go, chaos! They shout the words very loud, demons arrive, and chariots run through the streets of Altdorf, pulled by demonic steeds. And in many respects, that diminishes just how weird the entire night can be. All of the things that might make you uncomfortable could manifest. Now, the role-playing game in particular has got rules that can sort of ape this, but they don't do a very good job. You can do things like the arcane, depending on the edition of Warhammer you've got Tzeentch's curses, or you've got misfires for your spells and miscasts or whatever they might be, and you can roll on those tables to see what happens when things go wrong for your wizards. You can also do that when just Morsleib is full, or when you're in an area saturated with magic. So that means that, for example, if you've got yourself a Geheimnisnacht, you can very easily just go, well, let's roll on this D100 table and see what happens to everyone tonight. And it could be anything like all the milk and drinking water turns to blood within a mile. Or alternatively, it could be my nearest relative suddenly gains a mutation. Doesn't affect you, but it does affect your family. There's lots of strange things that do happen. And if you're trying to portray it in your own stories or for role-playing reasons, I would suggest dialing up on the weird as well as the horrific. So that goat that's talking, it perhaps likes being milked.
Yeah.
Okay, and it asks, because you need this goat, and all it can do is just sitting there out in the shed screaming, please milk me, please milk me, please milk me. What the and then the next day, and it's just meh, back to being the goat. This is what the Warhammer world citizens, the poor inhabitants of this place, have to deal with. Shit goes weird. And that really should be dialed up if you're dealing with your own version of Geheimnisnacht. What happens when Morsleib is full? almost anything could happen. And try to use your imagination for some of the horrors. And an easy way to do that is, if you're dealing with a character, what is it they want? What is it they like? What is it they don't like? And then have that manifest their fears, their hopes, their concerns some way. Someone's afraid, for example, that their girlfriend is pregnant. Oh, I can already think of several horrific things that could come knocking on their door come Geheimnisnacht. The fear that they have manifesting out there as something that's tapping on their chamber window. That could be pretty horrific. So yeah, go horror, go weird, go strange.
Yeah, and keep in mind that it is the night of mystery. So like, it's not necessarily all sinister. Of that, granted, anything weird and unexplained is by its nature sinister because you don't understand. The chats, everyone's just like, "Oh, Andy, no!" But
sorry, everyone.
But keep in mind that like you can have inexplicable things occur, and when the night ends, the sun rises, it's just over, like it never happened.
Yeah.
And your characters being bewildered and wanting answers, but there are none because it is a mystery.
There's a reason everyone locks their doors, locks their windows, battens down the shutters. It's because they know there is things out there. And sometimes it might just be a whispering voice that is nothing. Sometimes that goat, it's not the goat that's doing the talking. It's something else that's down there trying to entice you in. You don't know. That's why you hide. That's why many of the festivals across the Warhammer world involve getting drunk, or involve getting yourself away from having a party in Nuln with the Countess, because that is significantly better than the alternative that lies outside the glittering windows of the palaces of Nuln. You don't want to be out there. But as is often the case, when you're at a party or something like that, people often head off for a tryst, and they might go out into the maze, and who knows what they will find out there. It's a night of mystery. Play up the mystery as well as the horror, but don't forget the horror, because the horror is also fun.
Yeah, the horror is ultimately a core part of it. And the thing that can be fun is that just by making something uncanny and not working the way you feel like it should, and like balking against expectations, you can have something that you, as the GM who designed it, you know in truth that it's benign. It's not actually dangerous. It might even be helpful, but because it appears so horribly uncanny, it's like deep. Like, imagine like if you had a party that like goes into a maze and like they go through a wall of hedges and they end up somewhere that isn't a real place, and maybe there's something there that can help them. Like maybe there's like a person there they could talk to, but none of it's real. And like when they leave, they come to the realization that it's not, because they try to go back and there's nothing there. And they have to sit with the idea of, okay, did we hallucinate that? Was that actually helpful? Or was that something tricking us and manipulating us to try and do what it wants? You know, like if you have a raven come knock on your window and it starts talking to you and it's telling you things, it's telling you that your neighbor is a horrible dark cultist and he's murdered his wife, and that thing wearing his wife's skin isn't his wife, and he's coming for you next and you need to run. Do you believe the raven when morning comes and it's suddenly life is normal again? The bird's just squawking. Did it tell you the truth?
And your neighbor's sitting there.
Yeah. Or was it a creature trying to trick you into murdering your innocent neighbor and his lovely wife, who are completely normal people?
Or is it the double bluff? They are that, and it's purposely telling you just so you won't do anything.
Yeah, like it's
half the fun of these things.
Yeah, you can really fuck with people really, really easily.
Yeah, you totally can.
Why don't we go ahead and do the outro, and then we'll do remaining super chats.
We'll do our last super chats first. What would you rather?
We can do the super chats now. It's fine.
Cool. Okay, I'm cool with either.
Vintage Gaston. Nice. It's better when it's aged.
It is. Good cheese.
Yeah. Now I want a story where Skaven and goblins rise up, beat each other up, and the city doesn't even know because it's all underground in Geheimnisnacht. Yep, easy.
That shit happens.
Happens a lot. The Altdorf sewers are a fucking battleground on Geheimnisnacht, and nobody wins. But the people of Altdorf never hear about it. The sewer jacks probably know, but no one else does.
Yep.
And the thing that's really fun about this is there are a lot of forces, like good guy and bad guy, but there are a lot of forces like your Grey Guardians of the Olgu Order who are trying to make this happen. So like they know shit's gonna go bump up Geheimnisnacht, but they try and manipulate their enemies into getting in each other's way. So like ensuring that when the night goblins come pouring up out of the sewers, that what the path that they take happens to stumble them into a Skaven warren, for instance, or dwarf rangers who know that know that on Geheimnisnacht this manticore that's been nesting nearby is going to go berserk and head towards the hold, but making sure to leave it a trail of corpses or something, or attack it so that it aggroes into like an orc fort, and the orcs get busy fighting all these horrible monsters that have come plowing into their house, and other things like that. There's a lot of fun manipulations that are taking place to try and make sure that the bumps maybe go against the people adjacent to you, but not you.
Absolutely.
Gideon, Warhammer Mary Lud on Hexensnacht, but it's real. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a big horse skull thing from Wales, and holy shit, yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. There you go. Dopey Dumbo, last one for today. If a man and a bear had both their minds swapped, what would be the best way to fix it? Light magic?
Sure.
Beast magic? Neither?
Sure.
Both? Welcome back, missed you guys. We missed y'all too. Thank you for the warm welcome back.
Hey, Dopey Dumbo.
Yeah, the answer is technically there are many paths one might take to such a progress. I would say using amber magic, I feel, would be very dangerous for this.
Yeah, steer your intellect back into where it should be.
Yeah, light magic would probably be the best avenue.
Yeah, light. I mean, light is of the 8 core magic types, light is clearly the one that you would be dealing with. Would it be wise to have yourself someone who was an amber wizard at hand who could perhaps provide some spiritual guidance for the lost soul and where it's found itself? Yeah. Having yourself some sort of shamanic support does seem wise, but the colleges often bicker. Assuming, of course, we're dealing with the college's magic here. The colleges often bicker and don't talk to each other rather than talk. So it's quite likely you wouldn't get one of each. What you would get is an option. And your best option would probably be light. It would be an interesting ritual that would come out from that. And it would very likely fail, which had horrendous consequences, which could be fun.
The thing that I would argue is, this would be one of those situations where I think you'd, like Andy said, you definitely want both. Like the light magister to be handling more of protecting the human intellect and getting it back into like the human body, but the amber wizard making sure that whatever has happened to that mind while it's been in the body of the bear doesn't come with it. So like it doesn't
and
bring those
as well goes back to where it should be.
Yeah, so like. But I also agree with Andy that finding 2 wizards willing to work together on that would be difficult. It would be because they would also get in each other's way because of their own egos and their understandings and their arguments. This would be a really complicated situation. And I think if it succeeded, which it probably wouldn't, but if it did, there would probably be lifelong detrimental effects.
Yeah.
Like where that person is always a little different. And that bear, if God forbid you release that bear back into the wild, that bear would be a lot different. That would be your Yogi Bear, but it's an actual bear, so it's a lot spookier.
Smarter than the average bear.
Yeah. Now, hopefully, maybe that's just a bear that's very, very good at getting through locks and just steals everybody's shit all the time. I always, whenever I think of this, the thing that this makes me laugh at is it makes me think there's a very famous quote from Yellowstone Park, which is like a beautiful, very revered national park in the United States, that talks about the security of like all the trash cans and everything, where a park ranger has very infamously said there's a very unfortunate large overlap between the smartest bear and the dumbest tourist for how they design their trash cans, because everyone's like, oh, why can't you just make it where the bears can't get into it? But if they make it too complex for the bears, people are too stupid to figure out how to use it. So they have to like try and navigate that middle ground. Elemental exposure, loving the new Fellowship of the Beard. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, it is outro time because we're running out of time.
Okay, so outro today is going to be pretty easy. There are some subjects in Warhammer that are complicated, uncertain, and require a great deal of interpretation. There are some subjects in Warhammer that have been written, rewritten, and rewritten by different authors. So we have different iterations, and we as fans or as writers have a choice as to which ones we are going to be using as we move on to whatever the next step and the next iteration may be. Geheimnisnacht and Geheimnistag, the Day of Mystery and the Night of Mystery, are one of those that, whilst it's been kind of toyed with in multiple places, has a pretty consistent story. And that is, we have got ourselves a day every single year where bad shit happens. As somebody said in the comments halfway through the stream, it's sort of like Halloween, but worse and real. And it sort of is. It's a night where all magic rises and waxes and becomes more powerful. So if you're a wizard, you have an opportunity to do something potentially very powerful. And if you happen to be a bad wizard, potentially something dark, pale, and awful. And indeed, because so much Dar is wrapped up in the rising of magic on Geheimnisnacht, it is the night that you are most likely going to find many of the witches, the various terrible species you can find in the Warhammer world, giving it a go. This is the night that we'll get a great summoning from Nagash. This is a night where we're going to get the Skaven conducting a terrible ritual to try and bring Morrslieb down from the sky, because Morrslieb has waxed to its fullest. Geheimnisnacht is the time where if you're telling a story, you can pull out all the weird shit and make it potentially real for a night. The Warhammer world isn't the real world. The Warhammer world never was the real world. Although to begin with, right at the very beginning, it was well, you know, what if we could get samurai and make them fight goblins, and also at the same time, elves and Vikings? Awesome! That's not the real world. That's just not the real world. And the development of the Warhammer world and the explanations for its cosmology, for the way the physics work within it, the way its magic works, have left us with not just a night where we can play lots of cool stories and drop all the weird shit, but also a night that has significant, predictable outcomes. Full moons, tides, seas. We can tell stories far beyond the obvious, where we've got weird creatures rising up from dark shadows and influencing and whispering in the night. We can also have very real world ramifications of the highest tides of the year potentially dropping there, if that's how you want your tides to work in your version. You can have cities that are on the coastlines getting swamped by waters. It's more than just the bad guys, because we have physics as well. And the Warhammer world abides by the physical laws that we know and understand in the real world. Sure, it's got magic too. Its physics are bigger than real world physics, but real world physics still apply. Meaning if we have a day when both Mansley and Morrslieb are full, and the horror might be that it also aligns with the sun and there may be an eclipse of each other, then we have ourselves a super interesting night, not just for all the horrors that could occur, for all the mystery that may result. We also have a night where we've got massive high and low tides potentially that changes how we view how to portray the Warhammer world. So that's cool. But beyond that, it is a night that every single culture in the Warhammer world, to some degree, respects or reveres or somehow pays attention to. Whether they're attempting to hide away from the horrors that are represented by Mars Rising Fool, or whether they are worshipping it, or in some way using the dark magics that arise to significantly help their worship of the dark gods, of their beastmen, or perhaps to create new demon engines of their chaos dwarves, or just be crazy lunatics if they are night goblins, having themselves a big, gigantic, drugged out party. It is an evening where almost, in fact, not almost, every single species has something to do, whether they're high elves, dark elves, whether they are dwarves, goblins, orcs. They are all either hiding away from or somehow celebrating Geheimnisnacht. And that is kind of awesome, because no matter what sort of game you're playing, you can use it. No matter what sort of story you might be telling, if it's a roleplay game, you can bring this weird night in, have some crazy shit happen, and then move out the other side. If you're an author, you can use it as a primary vehicle for either the climax, where the great ritual occurs, or whatever it is that you may cliche-ridden bring out for everyone, or alternatively, it's something that happens through the course of the story, just showing how different the Warhammer world is to everything else. Because all too often it becomes the focus. It's up to you. It's there for you and your stories, or alternatively, when you're catching it in a loose reference, when you're playing Total War, you can go, oh, I know this one. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Bad shit is coming. Because ultimately, that's what Geheimnisnacht is. It's the night of bad shit occurring. Unless, of course, you're a bad guy, where then, because we all have moral relativism, it's the night of good shit coming. It's too easy for us to think purely from the human perspective, where we often go, well, it's a bad night, isn't it? No, the Warhammer world is deep and complex. If you're a vampire, it's not a bad night. It might be if you're trying to protect your human crowd, but beyond that, it's a night that brings many advantages. If you're a night goblin, not a bad night at all. It's rave time. Pull out your little glow sticks. Let's go. Sorry, your glow mushrooms. Let's go. We're good to go. It is a night that means very different things to different species. So this stream could very easily be summed with Geheimnisnacht, the night of evil and terror and awfulness as Morsley rises. Or alternatively, let's go with a different one. It's a night that can mean good or ill, depending upon who you are.
Yep. Also, hi, Lindsay. She has made stew.
Yes! I know I'm about to be doing. Oh, so just as a completely different conclusion on my side, I am currently going through what could be described as a hell of a diet, where I only get to eat like one small bowl of stew or soup and 2 shakes a day. That's it.
Yeesh.
And it's rough. However, the stew that Lindsay made for me last week was so freaking good. So I'm actually delighted she's made that. I'm going to be hiking out there pretty soon. Beef and red cabbage and carrot, sweet mushroom.
That does sound very good.
It does sound pretty good. Yeah. It does sound pretty good. Looking forward to that. So thank you, everyone, for coming for another exciting episode of Lorebeards. It was a good one. I think that was fun. It's always good to dive into the joys of Geheimnisnacht.
Yeah, just a couple quick things before we wrap up. I'll do last little super chats and stuff. So for this week, in case you haven't already seen it, we do have a lot of Lorebeards coming. I hope y'all love Lorebeards, because you're going to be getting quite a few more episodes a week than you used to. So some changes that on Tuesday. So at Tuesday, at the old time, which was 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m.
I think we might be moving that to 9.
No, we backed it up, didn't we?
Yeah, we're going to move it to 9, so that'll be 3 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Yes. Okay, so 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. BST. We are on Tuesday, not Wednesday, Tuesday. We are, me and Andy will be back for our bonus episode of Lorebeards every week, where we will be building a vampire.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so that's going to be super fun. Be sure to join us for that stream, as there's going to be a lot of live votes in the chat where you're going to be able to help us decide what kind of vampire are we building, like what bloodline they can be from, what traits do they have, what weaknesses do they have, all sorts of fun, kind of crazy things. That one's going to be really fun because there's actually a lot of really good material we can take inspiration from because of like Night's Dark Masters and everything. So it's going to be a hoot. On Wednesday at the same time, I believe.
Yes, 9 p.m.
Yes, yeah, 3 p.m. CST,
3 p.m.,
9 p.m. BCST. The 40K Lorebeards will be back with their second episode of the week, where I believe they will be doing a what if episode, and they're going to do what if the God Emperor died.
Oh, yeah.
So Alexis and Ross will be back for that. So we'll talk about that more, of course, on Tuesday. We'll remind y'all. And so that is at minimum the weekly schedule going forward. Is that you'll get Lorebeards on Saturday, 40K, Sunday, fantasy stuff me and Andy do. Tuesday is the bonus episode for fantasy stuff that me and Andy do. And then Wednesday is the bonus episode for 40K. That is the normal schedule going forward. And there will be more things showing up very soon.
Yes, there will. Do not miss the future episodes of Lorebeards because we have a lot to discuss and a lot to present to you. Not just Total War's got some new things. Let's discuss that. We have a lot of ideas, and I think you're going to enjoy what we offer you very soon.
Yes. Also, next Sunday, we will be covering. I guess I'll just go over the week. So this upcoming Saturday, I believe the 40K folks are going to be covering Titus. Or Space Marines. Space Marines. They're doing Space Marines.
I think it's Space Marines. Let me just check.
Yeah. It is. I'm 100% sure. So they're going to be covering Space Marines, just Space like Marines. The broad Space Marine lore, which makes sense. It is kind of literally like the core foundation of much 40K. And then next Sunday, we are going to be covering Sea Lord Ashland.
Or Sea Lord Iceland, depending upon how it's pronounced.
Or Aislinn or Daislin or Waislin or whatever.
Whatever the fuck he's called. I have opinions on that name, but they're just opinions. Who really cares?
Yeah, and do be on the lookout. There will be more things coming up that aren't on the base schedule. So I will be doing some video game streams on Lorebeards this week. You will likely see me and Vera doing some stuff, video game wise, because we're not guaranteeing, but would like to almost basically have daily content for y'all coming from different folks. Though keep in mind, gaming streams will be on Twitch only. They will not be on YouTube. Yep. Just keep that in mind. If you haven't already, please do make sure to follow us on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube, and join our Discord. And with that, also, yes, thank you, Lindsay, for reminding me. Next week will be a new show we'll be launching. Basically, you'll watch our Sea Lord Ashland episode, and then as soon as that episode ends, we will jump immediately into the Lorebeards Book Club show, which will be hosted by Lindsay Law and Vera Samila, and that should be super duper fun.
That's going to be awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. The first book club show is going to be an introduction to what is Lorebeards Book Club, and yeah, you'll get to find out. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too.
Yep. All right, and we'll see you guys then. So thanks for watching. See you all on Tuesday. Have a great time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.